Tonight, it seems like we're going to be mostly talking about distilleries that begin with the letter L, but it's all in a good cause. It's all in honour of an esteemed guest that's joining us tonight, and that is, and I forgot to hit mute tonight, and that is John Campbell. He's waiting in the wings, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with all of you and him tonight. I'll see you in a second. Hello, Whisky folk. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the vPub. Welcome to Thursday night. I hope you're all doing very, very well. Fantastic to see so many of you in to hang out with myself and John Campbell tonight. Yeah, it's been a while since I've forgotten to hit the mute button tonight, but hopefully that didn't disturb you too much. Just a wee bit of background noise. I was too busy chatting to John before I went live there. It's been a wee while. Getting through the guest list, you might recognise the fact that it's not been as much of a guest format over the last 12 or so months on the vPub, and that's kind of been deliberate, but it's also got a lot to do with the fact that during lockdown, there were people available everywhere all the time. It was very easy to schedule guest slots. That's becoming a wee bit more challenging these days when everybody's crazy busy and back to the coalface again. But also there's an idea that, and I've been talking to you guys about this, I've been speaking to patrons about this, what kind of formats that you like. And I think that the consensus remains that you like to switch it up. You like to have community sessions, you like to do wee challenges and things. You like to have wee focus vPubs, you like to have topics, solo sessions, and occasional expert guests as well. So as long as we keep mixing it up, we keep it interesting. And I think the most important thing, I need to be interested. There needs to be topics and things that I like to cover. And it certainly needs to be guests that I like to cover. So I was really chuffed. I got an opportunity to ask John if he would be interested in joining us behind the bar at the vPub a few weeks ago. And he was happy. He said, aye. What I was surprised about is how quickly we were able to schedule it. So I'm looking forward to relaxing tonight and talking about John's super interesting journey in whiskey so far. But before we get to that, of course, I'm going to jump into the lounge and welcome in some of you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated Barflies. I hope you're all doing well. Remember, if you're trying to get my attention, if you type Aquavitae, I will be dipping in and out of the chat throughout tonight. So I should be able to see that you're trying to get my attention with Aquavitae. If you're picking this up on the replay, thank you so much. If I've been good and done my homework, you should be able to skip through this live stream tonight using the chapter markers in the description box below, or just scrubbing along the timeline. I appreciate anybody joining live or picking it up on the replay. Thanks to everybody. Mark Goins is in. Good to see you, Mark. Chris Polak is saying, evening, Roy. Good to see you, Chris. And David UK ESB. I wonder if what your name actually is, David, but we'll just go with David. And he's saying Lochleas. Did I say Lochleas? I don't think I've said anything. Laphroaig and Lochlea. Did I say Lochleas? I might have. If I did, apologies. Ian Bruce is here saying good evening. Hope you and all the Barflies are well, and John is doing good. We are, Ian, and I hope you're doing well too. It's wonderful to welcome you in as always. And that's my friend Yuri there. He's saying simply about whiskey. Good evening, Roy, and everyone. Warmest regards to John Campbell, and thanks for the lower release. Oh, it looks like Yuri is enjoying the lower release from Laphroaig. It's going to be interesting tonight. I'm going to bring this up. I wonder how much, just because of John's kind of long history with Laphroaig, if it's difficult for him to get the conversation moving much more towards Lochlea. It's going to be interesting to see how tonight goes there, right? Hellswed is saying, evening, Roy and John. Good to see you, Helen. I hope you're doing very well. Andy C is here, so is Henrik Lundfisk. Good to see you, Henrik. Luna Aron from Germany, Black Fen, fantastic. And Whiskey Games, Matt Bishop is in. Mike Molas is Mike. Hopefully, I've set you as a moderator tonight, so hopefully you'll have less problems trying to get your comments through. Hopefully, I hope that works for you, Mike. Let me know if it's all okay. Ebhead Rolfie from Norway is in. Good evening, Roy. Look forward to your interesting guest. I opened the Anok tonight. Oh my goodness, did you? a wee special Anok. Rolf, tell me how it's going down. I hope you're enjoying it, my friend. Jimmy Legacy saying, hi, Roy. A guest sounds like fun. It's always wonderful to have you and Jimmy as well. I'm looking forward to our guest tonight. And I'm glad that you are too, Jimmy. Wonderful to have you. Jimmy and I are starting to just scrape away at the idea of opening things up to a bigger gathering when he's here in September. So we've got a very softly, lightly penciled in date of the 30th of September in Glasgow, and that is a Saturday night. Nothing planned, nothing booked yet, but it might just be a soft, gentle save the date if you're interested. More on that to follow. Graham Fraser is here. Good to see you as always, Graham. Wonderful to welcome you in, as well as Max Kreitner in Austria saying good evening, my friend. Good to have you in, Max. Oh my goodness, big block of orange here. Lots of stuff I'm missing. Looking chipper tonight. Thank you very much, Luna. I hope you're chipper too. And Brian Stormont is saying, good evening, Roy. Good evening, Barflies. A lovely friend of my wife's brought me some Springbank 10 after being him. Oh, okay. It's wonderful to get a wee win on Springbank 10. It's still available now and again. If the wind's blowing in the right direction, serendipity finds a way sometimes for us to grab it. I'm glad you managed to get some, Brian, and I hope it's gone down very well. MJ Rodness here saying good evening to the Barflies. Good to see you in, MJ. And George Ellis saying, hello, Roy. Hope you're well. I am. I'm very well. I'm very well. Let's get things settled. I'm actually sipping. I've been sipping to get things sorted tonight. A wee Lochlea. You might see by the colour of it that it's very cask forward. Sitting over my shoulder here. Over my shoulder here, I've got 2 Lochleas. And I've got another 2 in front of me here. I don't have all the Lochleas. I can't buy all the whiskies all of the time. But I bought the first release. That's over my shoulder here. And I bought the fallow. I've also got an Our Barley here. And I've got one of the most recent ones, the Ploughing edition. And I just, like any new distillery, like anybody else in the community out there, it's really nice to kind of taste these little kind of work in progress type releases. And I think we always have to frame it knowing fully that what we're able to do is participate in something at a very specific moment in time as a distillery is growing and developing and maturing. All of the releases from Lochlea thus far remain young whiskies. But I'm quite surprised tonight how tasty they are. I had a wee first release, and I remember that being very bright and very spirit forward when I first opened it and tried it. Trying it tonight, it's come along a long way just by sitting there in an open bottle for a wee while. I wonder if you're experiencing the same thing with your whiskies, whatever they may be, wherever they're from. I certainly find it to be quite a common thing. So we're going to try a couple of Lochleas tonight in the background, just as we chat to John about how things are going for him down in Ayrshire. But no doubt that a lot of you have got a wee bottle of Laphroaig off to the side to celebrate the legacy of John's 27 years, I think, over on Islay at Laphroaig as well. Nothing is off-piste tonight. We can talk about anything we want. So throughout John and I's discussion, there is nothing scripted. I'm happy to jump in and try and harvest as many questions from you guys live as I can. Well over 300 of you in, so we should be getting some nice crunchy questions as the chat and the topic goes on tonight. Laphroaig, Lochlea, anything else about whiskey that you fancy, throw it in and we'll raise a glass together and have a wee chat. Let's reach out to John. I'll tell you how this came about before I bring John in, but I was invited to the Ben dinner. I know that you all know I was invited to that because it was a Thursday night and it meant I couldn't make the vPub. And I wasn't very popular that night, but I've seemed to be forgiven, so thank you very much. But one of the wonderful things is that I got to sit next to some really cool people and I got to meet some really cool people as well. And one of them, I was sat next to John, and we got chatting throughout the night, and I took the opportunity to just out and ask him, would you be interested in stepping behind the bar at the vPub? And he said, aye, I would do that, no bother. And here we are. That's how it's come about. So not only is it whiskey has a way of finding you, but if it's whiskey folk, we have a way of finding them as well, don't we? Let's reach out to John, see how he's doing, and welcome him in behind the bar. John, nice to welcome you behind the bar at the vPub, my friend. How are you doing?
Hi, good, Roy. Yep, no, doing really good. Yep.
Have you just finished a shift? Are you back up in Glasgow now, or?
Yeah, no, back staying in Glasgow, so back home, waiting on the Snowmageddon to come that I don't think's coming, but it might be coming. And I've just looked out the window there before, kind of joining you, and there's the car roofs are all snowy, so it's
there's a dusting of snow, but this is what happens. We get these weather warnings coming out, and our Alexa machine is warning us every morning that there's a weather warning out for Glasgow, and it's just nothing's happened. It's still cold, but tonight the snow has started falling, so let's see what happens overnight.
Yeah.
We might have an interesting commute tomorrow, right?
No, got my supplies in, whiskey. I've got all the stuff, everything, so I'm good for a month.
We can hide if we have to, right? We can hide.
Yeah.
John, I see you've got a wee dram there. What have you got in your glass? What are you drinking tonight?
Well, you told me to go off piste a wee bit, so it's a Lochlea glass, but it's a Balvenie I've got in it. Now
a Balvenie. I imagined, I thought it might have been another distillery beginning with L tonight, but no, you've gone for B, a Balvenie.
Not yet.
So I think that's a good way to start the chat tonight then, John. I mean, I imagine that you've been doing what you're doing, you're going to have a shelf full of Laphroaig and you're going to have a shelf full of Lochlea. But I would imagine if you've got a wee Balvenie on the go there as well, you actually, John, you love whiskey.
Yeah, no, totally. Wouldn't have said it came to me straight away when if I go back to the beginning of kind of like a whiskey career, wouldn't have said I loved whiskey then, but like I really do now, and I love, like, just like everyone else, finding wee gems, finding wee things, just learning off others as well. So it's just, again, the social aspect of drinking whiskey. I'm quite good at that. Like, I really like whiskey and I like talking. So,
well, you like whiskey and you like talking. Absolutely brilliant. And the two of them do go hand in hand very, very well. But that's interesting then that you say that when you started out your career in whiskey, because I think that we all just look at the Eelach, right? We look at that wee island off the west coast of Scotland and we imagine that it's a whiskey island and everybody must love whiskey. But of course, it's like any place else, and that can't be true. But I think we do assume that sometimes. So when you started your whiskey career, you started it at Laphroaig, right? I was actually going to introduce you tonight by talking about that very thing, that, you know, if we imagine, I've got a wee overlay here, actually. It might be nice just to drop this in, and I'm going to cover your face ever so briefly, but it's no intentionally. Here, look at this wee thing here. A wee Laphroaig cask, and that's actually the Laphroaig warehouse, but look at that stenciling there. Now, that stenciling goes way back to 1978. But the start of your whiskey career, John, there can't be many people that went along for a job interview to stencil casks and ended up a few years later becoming distillery manager. But that's pretty much a synopsis of John Campbell's whiskey career starting, right?
Yeah, no, that was it. First job at Laphroaig, I'd been a lobster fisherman and decided I wanted a mortgage. So I was earning good money as a lobster fisherman, but because I was self-employed, the bank wouldn't give me a mortgage. So I had to get full-time employment. So decided that would be whiskey. Didn't want to leave Islay. And then thought, well, if I'm going to work at a distillery, I'll work at the best, most secure one, I guess. It turned out the best, but the most secure one, because Laphroaig had never cut down production less than 5 days. Even in the tough times in the 60s, 70s, it was always 5 days. It was always,
that's interesting,
kept going. So I thought, well, that's a more secure job to go for. So knocked on the door 2 or 3 times and eventually got in. Got half the wages I was getting fishing, but I got a mortgage. So yeah, strange weeks, but so like in and out. Yeah, stenciling casks was my first job. So yeah,
that's incredible. But what's also incredible, what you're saying there, is that, and there will be a quiz at the end tonight, but this hasn't made it in, but it's still a very interesting thing, is that if you actually go to Laphroaig and you choose which distillery you want to work at, because we're going back to the early 90s here, John, aren't we, right?
Yeah,
so you're actually looking at it, you've witnessed the pain of what's happened through the late 70s and 80s in Scotch whisky. The fact that a lot of distilleries were closing or doing part-time opening simply because they couldn't give their whisky away back then. This is in the real lull, right?
Yeah.
So that you're actually considering which distillery to go for based on security of potential employment. that is a huge reflection on the state that whiskey had found itself in throughout the 1980s and into the 90s, right?
Yeah, no, and like in the single malts were really only a thing for probably like Glenfiddich at this point. They were like shooting away, leading, like they had kind of ahead of the game single malt wise. And like you could get Laphroaig single malt if you go back to the early kind of 1920s, 1930s, but it wasn't really a thing. It was a blending. It was a blending market up until this point. And then I think because of that stress during the 80s, I think companies decided to start releasing more and more single malts to gain different revenue streams as well. And that's kind of really opened up to the world we've got today. So that bit of stress brought a bit of innovation, and today we've got all these amazing single malts probably as a result of that.
Oh, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, if you can contrast the beginning of your career in the early 90s to where you are today working at a very small craft distillery, really out in the middle of nowhere in Ayrshire, right? It's just that the contrast is really quite incredible. We're not really looking at whiskey the same way that we did back then, where it was a blending ingredient, right?
No, and like even I guess 27 years at Laphroaig, the script totally flipped. It went from like when I started there about maybe less than 10% for single malt, and then by the time I'd left, it was less than 10% for blends.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's completely flipped the way Laphroaig generates kind of income nowadays, and plans to in the future. But and then it's allowed the likes of this, certainly in the area I'm in just now in the lowlands, there's been a rejuvenation of single malts in the lowlands, especially through this, and generally all around Scotland as well. You can see it happening in Campbelltown now as well. A couple of more distilleries getting built.
Absolutely,
Even on Isle itself, and in the north, there's lots of new distilleries kind of bringing different angles to the consumer now, which is, it's all fantastic, I think.
Yeah, I mean, as a drinker, as a consumer, as somebody that's just kind of watching and enjoying the landscape, it's a wonderful time to be participating in it. Prices continue to be a challenge, of course, but generally the variation and the choice that we've got today is unparalleled, right? We've never seen it before. But I think it's interesting as well that you're, and maybe it's not. I don't want to apologise for this, John, but I think it's inevitable that throughout tonight, the way the chat is going to come in, the way that the guys in the lounge are going to come in and ask questions and things. You have a legacy there of 26, 27 years at Laphroaig, right?
Yep.
And now you're starting out on a completely, it's like almost flipping a coin. It's completely different. It's right at the other end of the bandwidth. A small distillery in Lochleas. Do you find that when people get a chance to sit and chat with you like we are tonight, do you find that you half of your conversation is still about your legacy at Laphroaig, or do you find that it's quite easy to focus on the future and Lochleas and things?
Yeah, it's a kind of funny one. I guess that's down to the individual, because, like, I mean, like I loved my time at Laphroaig. Always loved Laphroaig. Like, love being at Lochlea now. So it's just, it all seems like the flow seems natural for me, and just it's kind of like everyone. Like you get to V's in the road, you choose one way, you choose the other way. And it was the same, even at Laphroaig, there was lots of V's in the road that you could have chose this, chose that. But like, you just always, you've got to do what you think's right. I think. And that doesn't mean there's a wrong if you choose something else either, because that's not how I feel.
Well, and it's obviously different. You never really know what might have happened if you'd taken the other fork in the road or whatever. But that first fork, if you've got lobster fishermen on one side and go and find a secure job on the other for your mortgage, and you choose that Laphroaig fork. So let me place this. This is 1994, right?
Yep, November the 14th, 1994.
So that's a hat trick for Laphroaig. That's a hat trick, because that 1994, I think, could be the year they kicked off Friends of Laphroaig.
That's correct.
It's also the year they got the royal warrant from now King Charles.
Yep, that's correct.
And they bagged John Campbell. That's a 94 hat trick for Laphroaig, right?
That was just the cherry in the top in November, wasn't it?
Cherry. And they managed to keep you for 27 years as well,
Yeah.
which is quite a tenure for
I
any
think-
distillery
I
manager,
think so.
right?
So,
So you don't mind if we spend a wee bit of the evening
no, not at
talking
all.
about Laphroaig
Not
and
at
talking
all.
about that.
No,
John,
like,
what you mentioned there with a brand that goes back to the 20s and 30s, it's a brand that's very close to a malt drinker's heart. Okay, it can be a Marmite whiskey just because of how potent a malt that it is, and because of how high let's say a profile it has.
yeah.
But generally, it's close to our hearts. And when we find good Laphroaig, my goodness, it's unique. There's nothing else like it, John. Nothing else like it. So it's a place that's close to our heart. And then the people that make a pilgrimage to go there, my goodness, it doesn't leave you easily, right? So were you involved in the Friends of Laphroaig campaign or whatever? Of course you were as the years went on, but originally I guess that would have been a weird concept to kind of find a way to welcome in community into the distillery, right?
Yeah, no, when it started off, I think at that point, I think Laphroaig was getting maybe like, no, not even at this point. They weren't even doing visits at this point. So this was just before they started doing visits. They launched this program and they thought they would then start the visits to the site kind of thereafter. And it just grew and grew. It was really popular because I think the thing Laphroaig did really, really well with Friends of Laphroaig, it wasn't just I'm the brand, here's your information, I'll transmit. It actually it spoke back to you as well, and that was new. And the consumers, they had a voice. I felt with Friends of Laphroaig as well. I'm still a friend of Laphroaig myself.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
So, yeah, no, it was different, and there was events held, and you could come and like you were treated a wee bit differently if you came to the site. You got your rent and stuff like that, and it's just a bit of fun. They had a lot of fun with it, I think, throughout in different guises throughout the years, Laphroaig. And it was always able to laugh at itself, Laphroaig too. That's what I really liked about it. So it was easy for me to have like the same values as it. There was a lot of connection from my point of view with Laphroaig as well. And while it was tough to start drinking it and when you're 24, I'd soon got over that. And ended up like I absolutely love it now.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, it's the same as when I was 24, John. I couldn't touch whiskey. Absolutely, it's. I think it comes in time. I think it absolutely does. But that's interesting for you to then see it through that lens because you start to see impassioned people actively wanting to be connected with what you might have viewed as an Elach, right? Just a place that they made whiskey,
and still do. It's like it's one of the things that I really try. Like it's one of the things the visitor centres do. It shows like the global breadth of these single malts, and like it's something we really try to highlight, especially to the team at the distillery. And when you're working, if you get like I travelled all around the world representing Laphroaig. And it's just the response was unbelievable. And then it's the same response that the staff then see when the Friends of Laphroaig came to the site. And you would usually get like something like 80 or 85 countries a year come. It was some of the Friends of Laphroaig stories are like crazy. Like I wouldn't do some of the stuff that they did. And like and it was such an attachment. It was very, very real, which that was the cool thing about it as well.
Whiskey has a great way of doing that. It's a very emotive thing in itself, right? And when you can connect it with a place and a people and think every drop that's ever been bottled has been made here, it's gone through, that this spirit safe and whatever. So when you're talking about these fantastic stories, any you recall? Is there any? Do you have a favourite?
So many stories, I guess.
We like stories, John.
And it's kind of Because I remember like even thinking like back in the day when you would do a filling at Laphroaig, we worked it out. There would be something like maybe 130 barrels getting filled at a time, and that was 1,000,000 drams. And we were doing 3 fillings a week, and it was just like that's 3,000,000 drams we're producing, and there must be people drinking all this. So like, where does it go, and how does it get into people's lives? And you're thinking, from this wee small place, like the village of Laphroaig, there's 26 people, and it's pouring out 3,000,000 drams a week all around the world, and it's just carnage. But and like as you say, really really attached. There's married on plots.
In the field?
Yep.
People getting married there.
Buried in plots.
Oh wow.
Well, ashes scattered in plots. Few kids named Isla because of the plots as well, I think. So, but like, and
no kids named Laphroaig yet. No, yet.
No, well, maybe middle names,
maybe.
But like there was this. I guess a good example is like this couple, Indian couple, had booked their trip to Isla, and they had got it all organised 12 months ahead. 2 months later, she became pregnant. So 9 months later, baby born. They came to Isla. Decided to keep coming with their month-old baby.
Oh wow!
They had the pilgrimage all planned. Took his mum and dad, her mum and dad, and they just made it like an epic journey for all of them. And that was all just because they, as individuals, before all this happened, wanted to come and get the rent, see the plots, and just get the connection.
So we're committed, John.
I know, but like when that's it, when the commitment happens, it just happens as well. So lots of good stories from
that. Wouldn't happen for a pop concert, you know. I don't think it would happen for a beach holiday. No. But if it's for a bucket lister from India to Isla, then they just go ahead.
To keep going, and so it just became more expensive, and that was it.
Aye. I see it, John, and I feel it myself. The first ever fish eel I came across was in 2010. It was at Laphroaig, and the first time I've ever been there. And just to walk out onto that bay, and I've always, I see Instagram pictures and I see the storms. I see the way the sea can whip up. Every time I've been in that bay there, it's like glass. It's so peaceful, right? It's just...
You've just not been in January or February then.
That's but I mean, even out of season, it's just been this really calm. Sometimes it's been really cold, and even when it's been raining, it's still been really calm and peaceful. But I know I've seen it, and I know that it can be very moody and quite dramatic at times. Yeah. But there's a wee window there that you have. You know the window I'm talking about, where the couches are in the visitor centre at Laphroaig, and it looks right out onto the bay. It's a portrait rectangular window. And you can just sit there on that soft couch. And I remember sitting there one time, and there wasn't any tours available for me or anything. We were just in there for a wee visit. But the woman came across to me, and she said, "Can I get you anything?" And it was, "Oh, we're just having a wee seat for a minute," and things. She's like, "Are you friends of Laphroaig?" And I said, "Yes, I am actually." She said, "Oh, you'll be wanting your rent then." And she came across with the wee miniatures for us. And I think that was the realization that you've bought into something, but the company are so appreciative of it that they're buying you something just to say thank you. It was just a wee miniature, just a 5cl, just a Laphroaig 10. But we were really, really chuffed. That was, and you leave there with a very, very positive, I mean, everything's going to bleed into that positivity, but you leave with this very, very positive sense of kind of connecting and, the hospitality, the warmth of it all and things. And I think there has maybe only been one trip that I've been to Isla since, and I've been there many, many times now, that I've not gone to Laphroaig. If you're going to Lagavulin or Ardbeg, you pass it. If you're in Portellen, it's the easiest one to get to, right? It's just a wee skip up the road, and you can even easily walk it now with the trail. It's a nice, comfortable, warm wee place to go. Talking of which, I'm going to pour a wee dram, John, and I was wondering what to pour first. I've got something nice that I'm going to uncork. A Laphroaig it's not particularly special or expensive, but I think you might be tickled by it. But here's one of my favourites, and I think you've got your hands on this one as well.
Oh, the 16-year-old, yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
48%. Now, this originally came out in the UK as an Amazon exclusive, if we remember well. And I managed to get it from Amazon originally. This is my second bottle of it. We're not often treated, John, to mature Islay whiskies, let alone mature Laphroaig, at 48% and a decent price. And this was, at the time when it came out first, a decent price as well. It's harder to get that nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is. It was always one of those things. It was such a small amount of what Laphroaig did, like these older age whiskies.
Yeah.
It was literally like maybe 2 or 3%. Like even like the 18-year-old, 15-year-olds, all of them, it was such a small amount. But like just people were so passionate about these kind of, either whether it was 15, 18 or that 16 there. It's just a really nice age for Laphroaig, especially in the bourbons. You start to get all these kind of nice kind of tropical fruit flavors coming through. Lots of the casks got depth, but you still get the
tropical.
Yeah.
And is this all bourbon cask in that 16?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like you say, that sweet spot, that age. It's just those teenage years. It's just everything softens out. Everything becomes, you know, integrated. There's no one thing shouting it out. Maybe apart from the fact that it is very, very fruity. It is. There's hardly any left in this wee bottle now. Look, it might even be a bottle kill tonight, John. You never know. It's just a wee drip left in it. Is there any expressions that you had your hand on? Because we're going to talk about some of the expressions that so much of it went through your hands. Is there anything that you're particularly proud of? If you were to go back and take one bottle that you were involved in, what would John Campbell be picking?
Oh, that's so hard.
It's no easy, is it?
No. Like one bottling. Like could I choose Càirdeas, which has got loads of bottlings, but like that's probably the one that's, I don't know. I think that's the one. Like if
let's talk about Càirdeas
then. Like there's so many stories within Càirdeas itself that it's just like I feel I'm cheating because I've chosen about 15 there. But like,
absolutely. About 15 editions now, right? Or maybe even knocking on, could it be 16? But let's talk about Càirdeas. I don't have a Càirdeas on hand. My Càirdeas bottle is empty, as I told you. But if we talk, you've got a Càirdeas on hand, right? So
just got one here.
When you and I were chatting to set this up, you surprised me by telling me how this came about. This is a John Campbell idea, right?
It's never one person, I don't think either, but like it's like a chunk
drove you to
a chunk of it came through me because like we started off doing single casks at the festival, and we did a few single casks. It was basically the year after Ian Henderson left, 2003. We started in single casks.
For Fisheel, yep.
Yeah, just trying to kind of give us a wee, just something different. It ended up a problem. I thought I would be doing people a favour. It ended up a problem because you'd have 250 bottles. People started hearing about this. You'd have a queue up to the end of the road and you'd have 250 happy people and 2,000 unhappy people. So it would just be like, I've created more problems than I've solved here. So we moved it on, and we still kept doing like we did another one. We did a couple of bottlings actually for Friends Laphroaig exclusives as well, with bigger numbers, just to see like, right, where's this going to go? Because we didn't know how popular it could become, I guess. So
it's difficult to measure scale if you've never done it before, right?
I know, and it's just like, it's one of those things. I think from Laphroaig's point of view, I had to hit right as well. I know this for a fact, that we didn't want to be seen to be like, like one of Laphroaig's values, and one of the things about Laphroaig is like that welcome, and it is very welcoming. It is kind of comfy in its shoes. It knows who it is. I think it's good value, Laphroaig as well. It's all generally good, unless you go to like
20 plus, yeah.
Yeah, then it's like nothing's good value at that age. So,
yeah.
like I think so we kind of had to do that as well as part of this. So we were like trying to get price and volume matched, that it would be, people would feel they're getting something special, and it would be at a good price as well. So we kind of moved things on a wee bit, and in 96, yeah, 2006, we did a 1994, and that was 600 bottles. And that was just because I was made manager that year. We kind of thought we'd push it on a wee bit. And that was a bit of a disaster again. So then 2007.
Still not enough. That's the disaster you mean, right?
So we doubled it up in 1989, the year after. And then it was same. It's still like you're disappointing more people. And then like there was a lot of kind of like, because it was a virtual community, the Friends of Laphroaig, you would get all these people from all over the world saying like, well, why can we not get some of this? And it's like, that's fair enough. Like, so so then we kind of hatched up this plan, right? We'll do a release to the Friends of Laphroaig, but it'll be done at the Isla Festival. So you did that, thought about the liquid. Well, Robert Hicks, who was the master blender for, it was Jim Beam Brands that owned Laphroaig at this point. He went away and created the recipe for the first Càirdeas. We kind of thought about the branding, the names, and then we thought about just calling it Friendship in the end. And then I says, well, I'll like, we just thought Friendship, that's a wee bit like, so talked about it in the local dialect. And so my granny was really strong. She had kind of won like lots of kind of, I guess, like awards and medals at the kind of the Gaelic kind of competitions. And she like,
oh wow, right, okay.
Her first language was Gaelic, so she start speaking to you in Gaelic all the time. So I basically asked her like, what would friendship, like, what if you were talking about like in friendship or kind of community and stuff like that, what would be the word? And she said Càirdeas. And I went, oh, that's nice and neat. That would actually work. So it was my gran that came up with the name, really.
John Campbell's granny named something that's known the world over now, and it's 15 releases already. That's incredible, right? And it's a nice thing, because I believe, if I understand well, John, that it's not just a case of we are pals, but it's actually talking about a concept. It's a fellowship, community, friendship, that type of thing. That's what it means,
Yes, that's right. Because that suited, actually, like, we were talking about friendship, but the Gaelic word suited kind of what we wanted to mean better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, it's one of these things that when we come into whiskey, we feel a wee bit intimidated how to pronounce even the kind of semi-anglicised names in whiskey, let alone going towards the Gaelic whiskey names. But it's this type of thing, once you learn it once, you get it down, and that's it. It just kind of, it becomes quite easy. I remember way back in the probably when I was first over at Firfishiel, at Càirdeas that year. Now I don't remember what it was, but it was a yellow band on the label in 2010. Don't remember what the cask was. No, it wasn't. It was just green and white. But I don't remember what the cask was. It doesn't matter. But I was asking how to pronounce it, and again somebody said to me, just say the word like you're saying car chase, like you're chasing in a car. And she said, just speak it, say it quickly, and then you'll be fine. And that was us. It's locked in. Then we've got it forever. So that in itself is a great story, because that thing comes around through the people that took all those wee forks in the road, all these wee decisions through their life, and then there's this product that everybody's very, very familiar with. But we often imagine that these things are sat down and they're chewed over in big kind of board meetings and marketing meetings and things like that. But I kind of have this really nice idea about Càirdeas now that it's just John talking to his granny.
Yeah. No, I was sitting in her house in Bumwood with a cup of tea, just hearing this over with her. So like, yep, no.
But how did she feel about this product when she saw it? Did she?
No, she
Ambivalent.
She didn't drink. She was the kind of like, she was old school. She was an amazing woman. She was like, she did a lot of things in her life, and just a strong, like, she was the first post woman in Ireland and stuff like that. So she had a lot of kind of like all the awards for the Gaelic language and stuff. She was an amazing woman. So yep, no, she was somebody like, and she was one of these people that had complete command of in a room, like instantly. And like when we used to go and stay with her, we were on our best behaviour, me and my wee brother. So like, I know it's good.
We all have a good solid image of
She
it.
was the sage. She was the one you went to if you wanted wisdom, or if you wanted like, I'm in a bit of a pickle here, Gran. What are you thinking? You could go to her without getting the kind of hairdryer.
All the life problems she could solve, not just a case of what to name a whiskey, right? But all the things.
She was good. She was somebody that you could go to and just get all your stuff sorted with. Yeah.
Absolutely terrific. Danny Keenan is saying that initial smell and hit of flavour when you open a fresh bottle of Laphroaig is a wonderful thing. Like I say, even it's something that I know that when I'm trying to bring people into whiskey and you put a Laphroaig in front of them, they're absolutely going to fall in love with it, or they're not going to touch it again for another year, right? Is that kind of
it can be, and it's amazing how like some people like have never tasted it before, and they just jump in at the deep end and they like a cask strength Laphroaig. It's amazing. It's just like and it's everyone's journey into it. Really, it's just everyone how they just jump in at the deep end and
listen, John. I've often said it on this channel. The most effective tool I have at converting my friends and people I meet to loving whiskey tends to be big, bold, heavy, and often very, very typically Islay style whiskies. It's amazing. You would think that you need a wee soft, sweet, fruity space cider to bring them in at 40%, please. But in my experience, it's absolutely not that. Sometimes you need something that just fires every nerve end and gets all the synapses going, just every sense is engaged.
And I was, to be honest, like when I think about it, I was exactly the same, because like I knew I didn't like Laphroaig when I had the first bottle. Like, you would get it in your allocation, so you would get like 16 bottles a year of this stuff. So like it would be like, right, I know I don't like that, but I'm absolutely fascinated by like, why does it taste like that? Like, what's making it like? So like even me working at the distillery, I could get through that process quicker. So I went over to the Flavour maltings, like, what are they doing in here? What's going on? Like, and then like when I started, like within 2 years, I was working in the Flavour malting. So I was actually, the job was to make that malted barley then. So then you go that and you go to the mash house and you see what they're doing there, the fermentations, the kind of the mashing, and then you go over to the still house, like, what are we doing in the distillation? And everyone's totally different to Laphroaig in the distillation. And then like we saw it kind of coming to our end in the warehouse, and we'd cut it down with the water and then put it to sleep for 10 years. And you would be sampling every now and again, so you'd get to start to see the development of the flavors and the casks, and when the saltiness would come, for example, and stuff like that. So you got to got to understand who it was very quickly, and to a level that I guess a lot of people don't. They just know they like it. But so I kind of got like the understanding and then the love, I guess I would say, for Laphroaig, and just been impressed by it. I was overwhelmed by it at first, and then I just broke it. It's kind of like everything, isn't it, I suppose. Thinking about this now, when you're overwhelmed by something, you break it down one wee bite at a time, and then you get to the end, and then it's not overwhelming. So I guess that's what I did with Laphroaig. Reflecting on it, here tonight, I guess.
You were, but you were in. Well, it's good to have you reflecting on that. But you were also in quite a privileged position that the normal whiskey drinker maybe can't touch those individual like blocks in the production process and maybe fathom out where some of the flavors are coming from.
Yeah.
You know you're going to get potentially you're going to get the malty biscuit side from the maltings, and potentially the bready notes from mashing, and then the fruity notes from fermentation, and all of these things you're actually living it day to day. But you said something super interesting there that I need to just put a pin in. I need to ask this. You said, and you can taste when the saltiness comes. That's amazing to me. John, I'm telling you now that I taste salt in whiskey. I taste salt in some Laphroaigs. Absolutely, I taste salt. But I am told continuously by people who know much more than me and smarter than me that I do not taste salt. It's true. We can't, with sodium and the crystals, it doesn't make it through the cask. And yet you and I can tell from what you've just said, you get saltiness in whiskey.
Yeah, and Laphroaig definitely.
And does it arrive at a certain point? Or
6 years.
6 years?
Yep.
It starts to develop.
Yep, that's saltiness. And it goes at 13.
And it goes at 13?
I would say for Laphroaig. Like, sweeping statements there, but generally it arrives at 6.
No, that's
at
it.
13. Because you're not
incredible.
in that 16-year-old you tasted there.
So if we were to taste that, so the 16-year-old here, it's very soft and mellow. It's very fruit forward.
Salt in that.
Yeah. But, so does that mean then, if I was so I've got a 10-year-old here, John, but it's not any old 10-year-old. That's right in the sweet spot for saltiness, then, isn't it?
Yep, you can taste it. Or you get the feeling of tasting it. You might like the scientists are probably correct, but it's the same feeling as you get when you've got salt in your mouth. That salinity,
absolutely,
right underneath your tongue. The two wee bits, they're jangling.
I can give whiskies that I feel are salty to people who are very early in their journey, people who really don't know how to pull the flavors apart yet, or they don't feel confident to do it. They can do it, but it takes practice. But I can give them some salty whiskey. Say, do you think this is a wee bit salty? And they're like, oh, aye. So I know that it's not just me, it's people are tasting it. I've got a standard 10-year-old here, John. This is the standard 10-year-old that I remember being hosted by you in Frankfurt. It was a fantastic tasting. And you talked about how that is the linchpin of everything that you do at Laphroaig. Everything has to revolve around that. The 10-year-old is always going to get your focus first. But I figure, I mean, it's unlikely that this is a 1994 Laphroaig, but this is a vintage 10-year-old here, John, from the 1990s. It's one with one of the duck egg blue. I'll try and get this to focus.
Yeah.
The duck egg capsules on the top. Do you see that there?
Yeah. No, and there should be a lock code on it somewhere. They're usually on the back.
There is a code, and it's
code?
very, very difficult to read. Would you be able to fathom it?
Yep.
It's LB. Oh, Jesus, my old eyes, John.
See if you give it a wee scratch. Sometimes that works.
Right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to okay. LB, and then it's some numbers.
Yeah.
I'll try and I'll get my wee phone magnifier out. I don't have a Ralphie Steampunk magnifier. But I'm going to open this tonight. I've had this for a long time. And I think that this has got the royal warrant on it. So we know that it's post 1994, right?
Yeah.
So we know that this has been bottled during your tenure, but I think it was probably before you were distillery manager, absolutely. Yeah. But maybe back when you were still stenciling casks, John. Look what happened.
Yeah.
It shows you it's an old one. Shows you it's an old one. Now, I either go, so I've pushed it in. So I'm now out with the sieve, the coffee filters and all of that a wee bit later, but that's good. I managed to get it open. Now, so this is potentially early 80s, mid 80s spirit, but it's been in this bottle for, well, over as long as you've been, we're talking 28, 29 years, something like that, or 30, close to 30 years, right?
Yep.
It's fresh, so we're in good shape, despite that cork breaking there, which is something that I should know better. I should to be very gentle with the old corks, but it's fresh. It's not cork.
Especially when it's natural cork like that.
Yeah.
It used to be a big problem for Laphroaig with the natural cork. So that's moved to a composite.
This is so soft, John. This has been mellowed in the bottle here. This has been mellowed in glass.
Like in the 90s, like it was a mix at ages up to 15.
Ooh, wow.
So it was
but
like,
because you were drawing from a much, much deeper pool of stock.
It was overaged, yep. There was a lot of overaged stuff in it. Like, yep. So there'd probably be a wee drop. If it's soft, there's not going to be many refills in that either.
Wow.
It's
very fruity. It's not quite as bright as that 16. Everything is soft. This is kind of, there's a wee bit. This is kind of soft cooked fruits. There's probably quite a bit more sherry in this. I would imagine as well than a modern expression. Would you say?
I'm not sure. There shouldn't be sherry in the 90s in that. But like, see what it's like in the palate.
John, it's fantastic.
It should be quite smooth, yep. And then
if
you get that nice kind of licorice root right in the middle of your back of your tongue. Like just
absolutely. Clove, licorice, aye. But it's elegant as hell. It's so elegant. That must be difficult. No, this isn't Laphroaig. This is anybody that produces whiskey over decades.
Yep.
You're fighting dynamics that goes on in the industry and production, that if you are trying to be consistent, and each batch is very, very consistent, but over years, you can, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades apart, there's no way that you can find consistency. Would that be accurate?
I think that's fair. I think it's what would happen, like, because like, I'm glad you've got a good one, because what you'll find is that the fluctuations would be higher then than they are now. So I think like you get amazing ones, like you get absolutely off the chart ones, like amazing from the like 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and you can get just amazing whiskies in these bottles. You can also get some of the like really, really bad ones as well. Like I've tried a few that were just unpeated.
Wow.
And it was just like, well, this isn't Laphroaig. It's like, but it was. They did unpeated whiskies as well.
And what is it? What is it that you call the unpeated malt at Laphroaig? It's
that was from 2009. That was Càirdeas still.
Okay, I wanted to hear you pronounce that before I tried, because we would be saying I'm used to saying Arden Steel, and I know that that's wrong. So it's Càirdeas Steel. So there's an I in the middle there, right? Okay, and that's obviously the neighbouring distillery to Laphroaig, the mimic distillery, I suppose, from the 19th century.
Aye, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So there's potentially unpeated releases and things as well. What I would say, I think normally with a modern production of whiskey, then we're maybe not going to get these super high peaks, but we've ironed out the super low troughs, and the base bar has been raised, right? Is that what we're saying?
We're more consistent now. Yes.
Yeah.
Which means you won't get the peaks and the troughs, but like it'll be more the same every single time, I would say. Like the bar has definitely been raised in consistency, I would say.
Oh, John, this is an awfully nice bottle of whiskey. I need to send you some of this. I need to. Aye.
Yeah, no, I'm lucky I've got a few.
Aye, you've probably been squirreling away for a long, long time.
Yeah, well, that's one of these things, again, like when you're getting 16 bottles a year, like it's brilliant because you can use it for bartering, and so if somebody does you a favour on the island, you would use it for that, or like whatever. Yeah. It's just, but you always kept some as well, because that's, again, you get very attached. Like it's a funny thing as well, even like working in a distillery, you get so attached to where you're working, and you believe it's like there's nothing like it, and it's the best, and you're fully committed to that, like emotionally and physically to that distillery as well. And like if somebody starts telling you another distillery is the best, you go, oh, no.
I
You
can
get
imagine.
very, very protective and competitive about it as well.
And I can imagine in a wee community like the south of Islay, just everybody kind of talking about their favourite or which one's the best over the three distilleries. And I suppose it depends on who's working where. And that should be the case because you should be taking pride in your role and in your job and what you do and things like that and being kind of vocal about it. Talking about being vocal about things and this, we're enjoying this kind of virtual scenario tonight. But I was a wee bit miffed, John, to find out that the vPub is not an original concept, right? What I'm doing here every Thursday night for the last 6 years, somebody was doing that 12 years before me. Who was that, John?
Aye, well, that was Laphroaig. Again, friends of Laphroaig events. We would be doing this. It wouldn't be, it would just be a kind of annual event, but we would go all around, like we did them in Germany, US, Spain, Sweden. We did, and then at Laphroaig as well. But we would just do this kind of.
But you were broadcasting this on the internet, weren't you?
Yeah. Every Thursday night, it would be 8 p.m. UK time. Every Thursday.
A wee bit earlier. I'm going out a wee bit too late.
No, it was amazing. It was amazing. These events would get something like there'd be over 100,000 people watching these events. It's crazy. It's crazy, like the power of whiskey. Yeah, and there'd be a lot of your competitors and stuff like that watching you too, just to see kind of what you're getting up to, what the messages are, all of that sort of stuff. But there'd be a lot of just whiskey enthusiasts, and they'd never it was just a new format. And we kept that going until from 2007 till 2015. Our bicentenary was the last one, and that was at the distillery.
Oh wow,
that was a pretty cool one. We had all mostly all but one of the living Laphroaig managers on site for that event and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool.
Oh, that would be incredible. Aye, that's amazing. Yeah, and that kind of goes to show how connected and how emotional they really are. That you've got these managers who are coming back, and I can imagine that they would be excited to be part of it, right?
Yeah, no, they're proud of it. I guess it's never about you. It's always about where you work, and it's always about the brand or the whiskey or something like that. But the fact that you've had the chance to steer that ship is that's amazing, especially Laphroaig. I think maybe people feel so. That's about every whiskey, and you could say that's about Glenfiddich. I think I just feel like there's such there's a lot of emotion around Laphroaig as well, good and bad, which is fine. We embraced the bad too, or did at Laphroaig. So yeah, no, it's all. There was just a lot of I felt like there was always a lot of hubbub about Laphroaig, and that was good. That was kind of energizing, I think.
Aye. Well, everything you talked about, how, especially when you became distillery manager, that the challenges that came along were always things that you didn't expect, that you had no idea, no concept, everything that you had to go and learn again from scratch in order to, overcome these new challenges, things, whether it was legal issues or whether it was to do with production, whether it's to do with staff and all of these things, the way that a distillery manager is pushed. I'm going to suggest to you, John, that you are probably a more interesting guest to me today as Lochlea's distillery manager than if I had you on when you were still the distillery manager at Laphroaig. Because you've been able to build on that experience, you've been able to carry it all, bring it into a completely new environment, and through that lens, realize just how much you probably developed and learned during your 26 years at Laphroaig. Would that be me just imagining? Or
I think that's fair. I think that's a fair comment because, no, I think that's right. I think
if I was to ask you to find a more opposite distillery than Laphroaig in production in Scotland right now, Lochlea would be in that selection, right? It's really black and white.
That's why it won.
Yeah. Sorry, you said there that's why it won.
Aye, yeah. No,
so you were ready. You wanted to make that move, right?
I think so. It was basically COVID. It was all to do with the lockdowns and shutdowns, and basically sitting there reflecting away, And I have, well, I can't see myself, like, say, to get to kind of normal retirement age, I had another 20 years. So it was like, well, if you're going to move, now's the time to move. Because there'd have been nothing wrong with staying at Laphroaig, nothing whatsoever. And that was so, like, but if you are going to do something, you got to do it now. Otherwise,
Yeah.
in 5 years' time, there's no point in moving. So if it hadn't been for COVID, I probably wouldn't have had that reflection time to be able to get to that deep, I guess, in thought process. So, because I wasn't looking to leave Laphroaig, and it's just all of a sudden an opportunity was put in front of me that it's like, right, okay, I'm not going somewhere else where I have to, like, kind of be the same but slightly different. So it was more like, no, you're going to be something different here completely. The biggest thing I think was I knew all the answers at Laphroaig. I just knew, like, there was nothing that could generally surprise me about what needed to happen or kind of how it worked. Kind of just like so that was fine. That was comforting, but equally it was like I need to not know the answer again. I need to feel like I'm running around with my hair on fire and I just don't know and I'm struggling. And it was just that development inside me mentally, I guess, that was kind of one of the factors for ending up going. The fact that it was polar opposite as well. The fact that it didn't have this 200-year heritage and you'd be part of something in at the beginning. Well, that's, I guess, the three main reasons why I am where I am right now at Lochleas. So, yeah.
I mean, it has. I mean, when you talk about it the way that you're talking about it now, it makes sense. I can understand the motivation for it. But, you know, when it happened at the time and when I heard the story, the news, when it came out that you were moving to Lochlea, I wasn't the only one that was surprised. It was like, oh my goodness, that is a big surprise. And as time's gone on, it's started to make a lot more sense. But I remember when it came out, it was a big surprise. James Hope is saying, I had the pleasure of meeting John a few times at various festivals. He's always been a true gentleman. Poured some batch 1210 cask strength tonight. Fascinating to hear his thoughts on salinity. Reb Mordecai saying, interesting that John said 1990s, it wouldn't have been sherry cask. Yeah, I was interested about that as well, Reb, and I know that's a thing that's very, very close to your heart as well, Reb. I've had a wee dram bought by Christopher Malloy, and I'm going to, he sent thoughts on the looming peat malt crisis. Park that for a second. I want to talk about it. I think it's a good thing. Whether it's a crisis or not, we've had a news report out from Simpsons recently, so there's always ways around this, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, John. But I've got a comment here from Christopher Malloy as well. It came through on Patreon. And Christopher is saying, I met John a few years back in New York City before Chris is in New York City. And he said, before the world went crazy, a very nice guy. I hung around with him like he was Mick Jagger. Fortunately, he didn't seem to mind too much, although I might have gotten under his skin when I mentioned I had encountered about a year's worth of off batches of Laphroaig 10, which I had. So I'm looking forward to learning what he's been up to of late. Now, I can't imagine that you remember Christopher. I've not met Christopher Malloy yet, so I can't really. But there you go. It's It's the same effect that you had on me, John, when I met you in Frankfurt. You were very patient after a tasting. You know, you're exhausted. You've been standing up all that time introducing all of these whiskies and things, but you hung around as everyone was messing around, and there were even dregs going in the bottles and things, and people pouring off wee samples to take away and things. And you were very patient in answering lots of really quite enthusiast, geeky end questions, and nothing was off the charts. Questions like Chris is asking there, what do you think about what we're all aware of? We hear that Port Ellen maltings are not going to supply anymore. Is this a concern for peated distill? I know it's not a concern for Lochleas right now because you've found another way to bring peat into the mix. We'll get to that. But do you think, based on your experience at Laphroaig, do you think it's a real challenge?
It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. I think they'll find ways around it. There are lots of ways kind of around things, I think. Again, I think it's
well, what do we think the biggest risk is then? Do we think the biggest risk is maltings like Diageo's Port Ellen being much more self-focused, looking after their own distilleries, or do we think that maybe the threat generally of grain, or maybe the threat of a peat becoming a focus of no, you can't dig peat and burn peat anymore? What do we think the biggest threats are?
I know. I don't. The last one, I don't think is an issue. Well, it's not an issue. It is an issue, but like both, like I know because I was working in this that the Laphroaig and Moor are producing more peat bog than they're using. So that's pretty hard to stop them using peat if you're producing more than you're using. So they've definitely got that situation, and they've got a sustainable peat supply. So,
and of course, we're talking
on the
about
island as well.
We're talking about sister distilleries there under Beam Suntory. So you've got an insight into Bowmore as well as Laphroaig. Okay.
Yeah. So like the supply, you never know with politicians, but it shouldn't be an issue if you're producing or creating more than you're using, and you've got a sustainable supply. So the malting capacity is an issue, I think. Again, for different distilleries, it's a bigger issue than others. Kind of don't want to name names here either.
Sure.
But there are ways around it. There are ways around things as well. What I would say, without getting into too much detail, is that emergency kind of scenarios have taken place with regards to stuff like this, I would say. So you shouldn't have to worry too much about the quality. Again, the distilleries with floor maltings have more control over this, I guess, than not, because
they can gap fill.
Well, you can just go at peat at 3 times the rate, and do you know what I mean?
Well, Laphroaig is a wee bit unique as well, because you're doing the malting there, and when you're doing your own, I mean, you're doing cold smoke, so you're really doing you're taking care of so much. I don't know how much of your malt capacity you can actually. I say you, but back when it was Laphroaig. But anecdotally, there was a tin shed in the courtyard with a tractor parked in it at Laphroaig, and it was stacked pretty high with peat. And I remember speaking to somebody there and saying, "There's a lot of peat in there." I said, there's a lot of chat going on about how digging up peat and things like that. And the girl said, "Yeah, absolutely, it's a thing." And we've had to do sustainability, responsibility, and all of that kind of studies and surveys and things on it. And I said, "How much peat is in here? How much does that last you for?" And she said, "This is a year." So that when that tin shed was full, that peat in that tin shed would do Laphroaig a year. Potentially 30 to 35% max, I think, was the max capacity you could produce in your own maltings. I don't know if that's right.
Yeah, tons. Yep. But that's kind of the point I was making. So like you peak to a certain level.
Yep.
And that is roughly for Laphroaig, it's about 50 in the floor maltings.
ppm. Okay. Yep.
If you go to 150, you can dilute that down with plain malt.
And okay, that's interesting. In order to go to 150, what are we doing there? Are we just damping down the fire, getting more smoke, making it a much longer, slower process?
Yeah. But you can still add smoke, the Isla peat smoke, to it and just dilute it away.
So that's been more sustainable.
More. You're basically concentrating the flavours more within the malted barley. And then
it makes perfect sense to me. I wonder how much it'll change the profile, if it will change the profile. But honestly speaking, if we've got a way to, because we get this flavor, we get this hook for peated whiskey, John, and there's nothing else like it, right? So when that's what you want to sip, that's what you want. So the idea that profile, that flavor, that drink that's very, very unique could end because of a sustainability issue is kind of something that's quite jarring, right? So that's interesting to hear you say that.
I think it'll be more. I don't think it'll be a sustainability issue that stops peat getting cut for whiskey. It'll be more of a political statement.
Well, I'm going to move on to the peated Lochlea in a bit, but I'm going to do another wee uncorking first, John. This has been here for a long time. There's even dust on this bottle here. I need to get my bottles dusted a wee bit, but I think I bought this when it first came out. This is a Lochlea now, so we're taking you from Islay over to the mainland here, to where you are.
Yep, I'm going to do the same
Applying
thing.
your craft today, and this is Lochlea.
My Balvenie.
First thing I want to say about Lochlea is I opened this. I bought this when it first came out, and it's still sealed. So I was just waiting for the right moment, and I can't think of a better moment than right now. Lochlea.
Yep.
I'm a geek, John. I'm a whiskey geek. But there are so many new distilleries opening in Scotland right now that even for a whiskey geek, it's hard to keep up. I did a vPub back a few months ago talking about new distilleries and the impact that they're having. And I counted from the year 2000 until now, and then projecting forward everything that's a work in progress or has planning permission, we're looking at potentially 72 new distilleries.
Yep.
Incredible, okay? Okay, that includes Kilchoman and it includes Glengyle and everything since the year 2000.
Yep.
So fascinating. So we go across to one of Scotland's most isolated spots to put a distillery. There was nothing for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of square miles until one day we heard about a distillery called Lochlea. But this is what was nuts about it, John. Not only was it the first time we'd heard about it, but unless you were in the know, and I'm not in the know, I'm just one of the regular enthusiasts like everybody else. By the time we heard about it, they were already mature and looking forward to releasing imminently new whiskey. Lochlea was under the radar for a long, long, long time. Was that deliberate or accidental?
No, it's deliberate.
Deliberate.
Yep. No, the owner wanted it to kind of be that way. It is quite a small site as well, so there's no tours to the site or anything like that yet either. It just needs a lot of work to be able to.
What we're talking about, if I get the concept right in my head and I think about the images that I've seen of Lochlea, it's a farm.
It's a farm.
It's a farm.
Yep, it's a farm that's turning into a distillery. So, just over 400 acres, I think, in South Ayrshire. So it's up in the hills in the middle of nowhere too. It's a unique spot. It's not that far. So, like as I said, I'm based in Glasgow. It's a 35-minute drive for me in the morning down to Lochlea. It is motorway most of the way down, right enough. So it's pretty legally driving, of course, but it's
M77 down most of the way. Yep. Motorway dual carriageway. Yep.
Down to Kilmarnock, turn left, go to Dumfries, turn right, head towards there.
Now, wait a minute, you were telling us there wasn't a visitor centre, so you didn't giving out directions. There is also if you do that, if you go down the M77 past Kilmarnock, you turn left. If you follow those directions, you're going to be struck that if you've been into whiskey for a long time and touring distillery sites, the landscape that you are in is not a typical landscape that you would imagine would host a whiskey distillery. And that's because whiskey distilleries tended to be in wee secluded hidden places like Laphroaigs because it was born out of illicit distilling. But now we've got these, of course, way before that, and alongside it in parallel, we also had farm distilling as well, of course. But our idea of a distillery, that's going to be an interesting thing. But it makes perfect sense because, and Lochlea proved this, because I think you're one of only 2 distilleries in Scotland that produces all of your own barley on site.
I think so. Right? Yeah, no, well, we definitely do anyway. And I think, is it Daft Mill?
Well, the only other one I can think about is Francis up at Daft Mill.
Daft Mill, yeah, I was thinking that. Yep. So, yep, no, 100% all on site. So, and within 1.5 miles of the distillery. So, yep, and it's stored on site.
The barley's within a 1.5 mile radius.
Yep. So just basically, it's a kind of rectangular shaped farm. So you come in, the 2 fields on the right I'd used for basically grass, and then every other field, like basically it heads down towards Tarboton, so that's it, basically down the valley towards the coast it's heading. So it's everything's grown there. The barley's grown on site. It's stored on site as well. We don't floor malt it on site right now, and it's sent to Baird's in Pencaitland, which is just south Edinburgh. They malt it for us. We take it back. We've got malt storage bins, and then small mash, two-ton mashes. We do 1 mash per day, 5 days per week. So we do 10 tons per week. We'll do about 30 odd barrels out of that. All the whiskey is stored on site as well, so it's all matured, everything on the site. We send it away to be bottled, and then it's brought back to the site, and it's all our distribution's done from the site as well.
Oh wow!
So
the only thing that you're missing is malting, floor malting, right, or any kind of malting on site, and bottling.
Yep.
So when we talk about single estate, single farm, when we talk about all these things, it's difficult to get much closer than that.
Right now, yes, I think so. Yep.
Kilchoman, Daffmill, Ballindalloch. I mean, there are places out there that you can call that a single estate, but that's pretty amazing. That it's happening.
We're looking to try and improve that as well.
So that gives you a lot of control over what kind of barley you grow, where it grows, how you do it, and you develop over time. You figure out what's working for you, and that concept, that's quite amazing to me to think about that actually. When you say that a mile and a half radius, right, within a mile and a half is all the barley is going to be growing. So it makes perfect sense that you would bring out an addition and call it our barley. I mean, it's not a throwaway thing. Literally, that is your barley.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly why the name is that way. It's one of the things that makes Lochlea unique. It's all barley.
So if I understand your core expression well, and I'll try and explain it, and where I get it wrong, you can step in and say.
Yeah, that's all good.
But our barley has become so I've had your first release, the one I was sipping before we went live tonight.
Yep.
That's obviously been sold. Our barley's come along. That's your core range. That's your perennial. Our barley is your core range product, right?
Yep.
And then we've got the first crop series. And the first crop series is a season on a farm, split into 4 expressions as we understand it, where you've got sowing, which was ex-bourbon cask. You've got harvest, which I think was a mix of casks, including port and wine and things.
Port, yep.
Then you've got fallow, which is the dark one that I was sipping, which is over my shoulder here. It's just out of shot, sorry. So that much more kind of cask forward release there. It was much darker, sherry forward. And then you've got finally the one that I've got in front of me here that I want to thank you for a couple of reasons. I think this is a very, very interesting whiskey in ways that I don't know if you quite... I don't think there's anything deliberate about this, but I'll tell you why it's interesting to me. There's a big debate in our community always about colour, and we don't really care. We understand why colour's put in for consistency and all of these things, but one of the things that it robs us of, John, is that if we're going to hold a whiskey up to the light and marvel at its colour and really try and enjoy the colour as part of the appreciation, if we figure out that that's cosmetically altered or if it's not natural, then it kind of robs us of that. It nullifies the whole thing. What we've got in the bottle here, and I'm going to hold this up now, it's almost got a lime colour tint to it, but it's pale in the bottle, but it's ridiculously pale in the glass, and yet it's full bursting with flavour. And it's this idea that we don't need we need colour because we're humans and we buy this idea of dark. But as time goes on and we drink more whiskies, we realise that colour doesn't equate to a wonderful drinking experience all the time. But look at this. Look at the colour of this. It's so pale, and yet still full of flavour. What's amazing about this one, John, is that you make no bones about it. This is refill Scotch whiskey casks. You know, the only thing that's been in with these casks before is other whiskies.
Yeah.
That's still just as exciting to me as something that's had wine or sherry or something else. What we've got here is, and I think we could probably guess quite easily where the Islay casks have come from for your ploughing edition here. It's you're smiling there. Is that it's legit? It's the Laphroaig casks, right? They're quarter casks, and
Like, you taste it and tell me.
right. Okay, I'll pour a wee bit.
I think legally all we're allowed to say is Islay casks.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you now that
You should when we were creating this one, though it should be very obvious what the Islay cask is. Like the second half of this dram, you get all the Lochleas fruits and flavours, and in the second half of this dram, you should get nice, I guess, licorice fruit flavours coming through.
Sometimes if it's a peated cask, the peat is not often overt, especially if you suffer from peat blight like I do, where sometimes I've got a peated dram in front of me and I can't even detect the peat anymore. I don't know if you suffer from it too occasionally, but it's certainly something that I'm aware of. But this was more peaty than I expected. I bought this earlier in the week at Good Spirits Company in Glasgow. The other thing I want to thank you for is this was £50, John. One of your inaugural initial releases. We know that you need to make money. We're not asking for cheap whiskey, but we'd like the whiskey to be fairly priced. Nothing I've bought from with a Lochlea name on it thus far has been over £50. So I'll raise a glass to you for that. It's very much appreciated from us as a community. We know that you're not going to make all your money initially. It's going to take a while, and you're subsidising a lot of these releases right now. But that's important to us because you need people to be speaking about your whiskey.
Totally.
When I tasted this, the first thing that hit me wasn't the peat. It wasn't the fruit. It was the texture. It was the oiliness. It was the gloopy arrival. That's for me, that's one of the kind of real kind of woo factor things for me is texture. I love texture in whiskey. It's probably why I lean towards higher ABVs and cask strength things. But that was the first thing that struck me. The honesty of this whiskey is fabulous. So I think especially when you factor it alongside your vatted or barley, your experiments with just the pure bourbon, then you move into the harvest with the mixed casks, then the sherry, and then it completes a nice. If you only had a wee selection of Lochlea whiskies on your shelf, within the completion of your first range already, you've already got a very good snapshot of the flavour profiles in Scotch whiskey.
Yeah.
That must be deliberate.
It's totally deliberate. Yep. And it's kind of one of those things as well. Like we want to try different things. There's a real creative spirit within Lochlea. We have to get our foundation tracks down, so our barley does that. But this allows people to see things very differently, and we can react to that as well. So, like, we do have our plans. We definitely do know kind of what we're doing, and we have our strategy set. But equally, like, let's have fun as well, and let's try different things, and let's show how good we can be. And like, I think we're off to a good start. I can tell you that crop twos are going to be better.
So that was my next question. First crop. Yep. So that means that the next 4 expressions for next year, for the year ahead, let's say the farming year rather than the calendar year, does that mean we're now on crop 2?
Yeah, sowing is
sowing will have another one. Yep.
Yeah, sowing was January the 25th.
So
that was ploughing. Sorry, sowing is coming on March 21st.
Ploughing was Burns night.
Sorry, I've seen your moment there. March the 21st, crop 2 sowing will be released, and it's better than last year's. I can tell you as well.
Are you going to keep sowing always bourbon?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, they'll change every year. So, sowing is a wee bit older this year, and we've really kind of honed in on kind of, I guess, who we are a wee bit as Lochlea, and so what we kind of deliver and what we want to deliver. We would kind of we've kind of got more of an idea of who we are and what we want to be put in the market this year, I would say. That's the development at Lochlea from crop 1 to crop 2. So,
And are you letting the whiskey lead you a little bit, or have you got a very firm strategy, or? Because I imagine that if you're
it's a wee
planning
bit of both, like, because we're always trying. Like, I guess we're trying to understand what a 10-year-old will taste like. We've got a feeling, and we know, and we're kind of heading towards that. But equally, if we find like, oh, this is interesting, people will be interested in this, and like this is the change, like from crop 1 to crop 2. So yeah, no, we hope to do that, like 3 or 4 crops, probably 4 crops, like the 4 seasons 4 times, and then by then we should be just about ready for an age statement as well. So
this is in concept. This is almost like when Glengell Kilkerran did the Work in Progress series releases, and they did it in different wood and things like that. And then eventually they popped out with a 12-year-old after they'd been through the Work in Progress. So that's exactly what we're seeing here.
A bit of that, and just like trying to understand like our consumers and what they're liking and what they're not like. So.
Well, if I went to the typical consumer, John, I guarantee you that if there was no external input and they looked on the shelf and they looked at these 2 whiskies here, I know what they would be drawn to as humans and as typical consumers. They would be drawn to this fallow. If I was inviting people into my house and I wanted them to sit down and have a nice dram of whiskey, a crowd pleaser, I think I would be tempted to pour this. But if I was sitting down with my whiskey pals, I would pour this.
Yeah. No,
so it's not an easy thing for you to do, right?
No, I'd agree with you too. And like we were like, I think, yeah, ploughing's more interesting to me than fallow is too. I would say that definitely.
Well, Graham Fraser's got a question on that.
I think the challenge of ploughing was harder than fallow.
The what?
The challenge of producing ploughing was much harder than producing fallow.
Because you can rely much more on the overt influence of the cask.
You can't really muck up that.
Good quality sherry cask. Is this mostly American oak sherry or?
No, European.
European oak. Fantastic.
Yeah. So no, and like, yeah, really good quality casks. Really good quality casks. So yeah, but
not cheap.
The ploughing, I really, really wanted to get the both characters shining through, and I really worked hard to get that to happen. So
there's an upcoming vPub, John. It's looking like it's going to be next week, and it's going to be all about peat, and it's going to be about different peat and things. But one of the things I'm going to share in that vPub is I think the segment that's underrepresented in peated whiskey is lightly peated whiskey, which I think can be marvelous. When the peat is there, it's part of it's a wee bit like your 16-year-old Laphroaig. Peat is still there, but it's just adding a seasoning. It's not the thing that's leading. Do you know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
and I think that's underrepresented, and I think that's what you've managed to pull off with that ploughing edition. But for me, it's such a heavenly, gloopy, thick texture. I think at 46%, I think it's 46%. You know, it's the youth is in check. It's spirit forward. It's still very young, bright spirit. But I think it's easily drinkable despite that. Given 46%, and given the fact, thank you very much, I'm saying thank you again, that you put on the label natural colour, non-chill filtered, is that important to you?
Yeah, no, it's important to, like, I think the whole team at Lochlea that we're honest about everything. that's one of our core values, just honesty. Like it's just it just is what it is, and like we had.
It's also the market that you're
types of
seeking.
honesty, I guess. Aye, so it's just like, no, it's a standard. We just want to have minimum 46. We have done a couple. We've done a 48.
First release, I think, was 48, if I remember.
So yeah, it just wasn't right at 46, so we had to raise the alcohol a wee bit. Just
interesting.
Just to get the kind of, it was more the palate aesthetics were wrong at 46. So we raised it to 48, and that helped a lot. But the rest have been 46, and because they've been pretty robust anyway, and the water really helped in ploughing to just elevate that smokiness into kind of where we wanted it to be as
When
well.
you say the water, sorry?
Like the reducing water. So like when you go from cask to bottling strength, basically, that elevated the smokiness nicely and ploughing just to a level that was really nice.
So you're not going to tie yourself down to an ABV. You're going to work out, especially for these seasonal releases, you're going to work out what ABV works best.
Yeah. We're doing a lot of the time as well.
Even although that could affect your bottom line if you bump the ABV up, right?
It'll affect the bottom line more if you release poor whiskey.
Yeah. That's what I was hoping you would say. Fabulous.
So like we're doing we're always doing the very best what we can, and we've definitely upped our game this year, I would say, again. So, and hopefully we keep, like, everyone's just learning more and more. So like it's really it's like, it's hard to explain. It's kind of like we've just kind of, over the last month, we've completed harvest crop 2.
Yep.
We've been working on another project that's really exciting because it's really, really good liquid. And then basically started working on fallow crop 2 today, and it's got a nice twist in it this year as well. It's not just, there's a couple of different.
You're not in a position to share the super exciting one then.
Oh, let's just say it's really exciting when Lochlea is straight out of a barrel.
Ooh, that's more than enough. That's more than enough. Thank you very much. Graham Fraser is saying, has John changed anything from the whiskey he inherited on taking over at Lochlea and going forward? So obviously Malcolm Rennie was there first. Yep. Like he was there ahead of you. Malcolm's now at Rosebank, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So I mean, I think it's natural that you would want to change some things, even if you were the incumbent. But you've already mentioned that you're modifying and changing things going over. So did you find that you changed things when you came in? 2020, you arrived there, late 2020, is that right? No, 2021.
21. Yeah. November the 19th, 21. Yeah. So
you're only a year and a half in, John.
Yeah. Yeah. I've learned so much in that year as well. It's crazy. Not like, it might feel like we've changed everyone, but we haven't really, like, more like, what have we changed? I'm not sure anything that MD would notice.
So it's probably just been evolution, we tweaks rather than.
I would say, like, go with that. Yeah, definitely. Because, yeah. No, nothing really. It's more about, like, what's changed. I guess, like, really trying to put all my nonsense into the operators' heads and give them the kind of, trying to give, like, the team are really good at, like, they're really coachable. So, like, trying to just give them all the ways, the tricks, the kind of, this is, like, have you thought about this? So you can this. So they probably, like, they're quite glad the days I'm working from home. So, but it's more just like, just push, keep trying, keep like big, kind of like try things. Don't sit there not trying things.
Be
Keep
part
pushing.
of it rather than an
Aye.
automaton, right? Ian
Yeah,
Bruce
no,
is saying, does John think all the new distilleries, with all the new distilleries, that your expressions need to stand out? Is there pressure on you to find something that's unique or to stand out? Yes.
no, we have to stand out. Yeah, totally. There's absolutely pressure on each bottling, I would say, and like that's why we have to keep upping our game. We keep digging deeper. I guess understanding ourselves better. So yeah, no, absolutely. Like, yeah, we all feel that, I think, and we want to. Like, we're really passionate about showing ourselves in the right light because, like, the potential is huge. I think for Lochlea, it's
Well, I think especially the story about the barley and the fields being just so on hand, and
why, and just the liquid quality as well. I think, like,
yeah,
when you get down to like the story is amazing, and like I think that'll attract a lot of people. Like,
yeah.
it's like all we're doing all the right things with the packaging, etc. But like I think the liquid can be like really, really good liquid as well when it comes down
And
to it.
and we've got this far in the vPub without mentioning terroir or Robbie Burns. We're doing well, John. We're doing well. Jimmy
Yeah,
likes brought us a dram to say the biggest compliment I can pay John is that his appearance tonight has definitely put Lochlea on my map. Now, let me tell you, he's one of our most prickly customers, John. So if you're on Jimmy Legg's map, you're doing quite well. Cheers, Jimmy. Thanks very much for the drama, friend.
yeah.
Carson is saying what you described about subtle smoke just now is exactly what I'm all about. Excellent, You and I are in a similar boat. We enjoy our smoke, but it's nice when it's part of the thing rather than the whole thing. Jimmy Jazz is saying, Jimmy Legs takes notice. If Jimmy Legs takes notice, the world will too. He's just echoing exactly what I've said. Good to have you in, Jimmy. I hope you're doing well. Gordon Fraser is saying, cast strength, I'm in. He picked up on your hint, I think, John. And Peter Lee is saying, good evening, Roy. I'm home now. Can you tell John Campbell thanks for having Denise and I at Lochlea Distillery on Whisky Monday? We have both peated and unpeated cask. Nice haircut, he's saying.
I thought I better tidy myself up, Peter.
You're doing better. You're doing better than me. Peter, I hope you're doing well. It's obviously you're back for your work now. Jimmy Legg is saying, how important does he feel dunnage warehousing is? Now, you're a wee bit spoiled at Laphroaig, but all the new warehouses that they're building out there, they're not dunnage, John.
No. And how important is dunnage? That's a really good question. I think it adds an element that it's just different. It's really different. I think that definitely tried to show over the years when I was at Laphroaig the difference. You could see it in the cask strengths even between the batches when you would go in like dunnage warehouse, bottom of warehouses, top of warehouses, stuff like that. So we definitely tried to show that through the different batches of 10 cask strengths. Yeah, no, it's definitely a thing. I think it's a, what does it add? It's hard to explain. It adds a kind of damp, musty flavour that I think is just brilliant in the background of whiskies. It just almost gives it a credibility.
A sense of place.
Aye, yeah.
And there's a thing, John, that you and I will know, and probably if you've been working in distilleries for as long, maybe you're not aware of it, but for people like me who visit distilleries occasionally, we walk into a dunnage warehouse, that sudden drop in temperature, that change in humidity, the smell that's in the air, you can't put your finger on it. There's whiskey there, there's wood there, but there's an earthen tone to it as well. There's certainly something about the still, cool air. There is something that's magical about a dunnage warehouse. Don't get me wrong, it's wonderful to walk into any warehouse and just soak in the atmosphere. But I agree with you, and it is difficult to put my finger on what differentiates that, but just that idea. We use it as a tasting note. We say dunnage. Pedro Menezes is in saying, good evening, Barflies. Good to have you, Pedro. And Jimmy Legg is suggesting, with an exclamation mark, as Jimmy does, depth. We're talking about depth. It's as good a way as any to describe it, Jimmy. Graham Fraser saying the Glasgow Whisky Club really enjoyed our visit with John last October. Must have been the most people visiting at one time, but John wasn't phased, I think. I'm a member of the Glasgow Whisky Club. I was invited to that trip, John, and I couldn't make it, but I was jealous as hell. I know my pal Sevi raved about it. He thought it was a fantastic trip down there. Next time I'll make it, because I know it's a privileged thing to be able to do. And Daniel Williams, thank you for gifting 5 Aquavitae memberships. John, I have to say that when our journey with Lochlea started, we were a wee bit blindsided. There was a stealth distillery suddenly appeared, and within a few months, bang, we've got a first release. Yeah. That's the opposite of Daffmill and Kilcare and Glengyle, right? Because they were teasing us for years. Daffmill were even worse because they didn't even let us have any whiskey for 12 years, right, before they came out with whiskey. At least Kilcare and Glengyle were leaving work in progress releases. But Lochlea came out hard and fast, and they brought out their first release. Then they started to bring out these different releases, and I think it takes a wee while for the concept to drop. There's a reason that you're calling it sowing. There's a reason that you're calling it harvest, fallow, and ploughing. You're talking about the seasons of a farm. There's a reason that you have, I'm doing your selling for you here, John. I hope you don't mind.
I was just going to say, I did a really good job.
Yeah, there's a reason that you put tractor marks on the glass. For me, it just makes it easier for the bottle not to slip. I don't think I pay too much attention to these things. And yet, when you sit and realize that, okay, this is quite interesting, because they're using the seasons and applying it to different expressions of whiskey, different ways that whiskey flavour manifests. And they're bringing it out to us with very little fanfare, a bit like the stealth mode that you operated in before we even knew that you existed. And at £50 and less, all naturally presented, take it or leave it type attitude, which, John, I think is absolutely perfect. And the fact that you're willing to step out and say, aye, here's what we're doing, here's what we're excited about, here's what we're bringing in the future, means that these are the kind of whiskies that remove the anxiety that we have as whiskey fans when we suddenly can't afford our favourites anymore, because they've been taken away, because they're so expensive now, because they're out of our reach. We've got this literally sitting on our horizon, waiting to get better year after year after year. It encourages me that we've got somebody like you at the helm to ensure that. And if you're up for it, next year, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, we'll have you back behind the bar at the vPub and hold you accountable to see how you're doing with such a thing.
That's why it's good to get it, like, because it's always one of those things. It's actually good to get direct feedback, because you're always wondering, like, how are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing? So, like, and it's because it's been received really, really well. Like, the sales are really, like, the much better than we anticipated. So Perfect. That's good. I think it's down to the, like, there's a lot of things within this. There's the, Jesus, where have you come from? We didn't know about you. I need to try and find something out about you. And then when you start scratching the surface, there's actually quite a lot of good stuff there that can link, whether it is like we grow all our own barley, whether it is about the farm and the seasons on the farm and how it all meshes together with this tiny wee kind of distillery that does 10 tons a week. And so there's a lot of it getting so mature. What does it mean? What even, like, I'm not going to talk about the T word then, but like, what does airshed mean? Like, what difference is that going to make to the whiskey? It's all stored in not many. Well, so like, what do all these things mean? And like, I am really trying to fast forward all that and find it out for ourselves as well, because I know the base liquid, what we've got, is just phenomenal just now.
Do you get the impression, though, that you are kind of just witnessing and waiting for the whiskey to communicate with you what it's going to be, as much as what you're designing what it's going to be?
Yeah, no, we're trying. Like, we are trying different things, lots of different things in the background as well. So there is a lot of kind of experimentation and the kind of evolution in the background while presenting the kind of trying to put our best foot forward with the bottlings, and saying like just trying to up our game as well. So like all of that is happening, but like we're in the background, we're trying to say, well, like how's this going to work, and what's the next stages of this? Because as you say, I've only been there a year and a half, but even within that year and a half, the liquid has gone from basically a 3-year-old to a 4.5-year-old. So it's amazing, the evolution even in that year and a half, like from where it was, like the casks were that like we've got, because we have casks laid down for age statements. So like we're trying to track them and see what the evolution's like, and see kind of, because we're planning an age statement, but it might not be just in the maturation cycle that suits that. So it's why why all the distilleries have different age statements.
Maybe it's going to be ready at an 8-year-old, John. Maybe it's going to take till 10 or 12 or somewhere in between. It's going to be interesting to wait and see. But you're bringing second crop, potentially third crop beyond, maybe cask strength. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And you've got your focus firmly on an age-stated product in the future. John told us, says Graham Fraser, that there were experiments with floor malting at Lochlea. I heard it wasn't floor maltings at all, Graham. I heard that they were doing it in the backs of lorries and things, but is that plan being progressed? Lowlander you've already answered Lowlander's question here. Can you ask John on average how old their whiskies are? You're talking about 3.5 to 4 years old. I think it just makes sense if we look at your founding years and you know how long you've been producing whiskey, what's mature. It's of that order, and I think that's very typical in new distilleries just now. 3-year-old whiskies from new distilleries at the scale you're producing it today, John, they're a lot different from 3-year-old whiskies from the Laphroaig of even back in the 90s and things that would have been straight into a refill cask and been laid down for 10 years plus, right? It's a different thing. It's whiskey being made in a different way. Would I be right? And I don't want to skip Graham's floor malting thing, because I think it is part of the puzzle there. You have experimented, haven't you?
Yeah, no, we did a batch last year, and we'll be doing some again this year. It's we don't have the equipment to do it properly, but we do it with I guess just the best foot forward that we can. So
was it true that you were doing it in trailers?
The steeps are trailers.
So you were soaking it, and how did you even keep the water in?
Oh, we didn't. it was we like the kind of Darren and I were trying to kind of put the water in the top, and it was just basically coming out the bottom. So we got a 401 yield to, and I was just like, how did we, like, I didn't think that barley was germinated. I don't know how we got that. So
401. So that what you're talking about is litres per ton, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So back in the day, I mean, anybody that hit 400 was doing well, right?
Yeah, no, that was really good. So I was really surprised. Then we were lucky. We just had built a new warehouse 3, and so it was empty at this point. So we emptied the trailers, the steeps trailers, into the warehouse 3, laid it out on the floor, and then basically me and my second youngest son tended the floor. So it wasn't very good for him, because I said to him to come on down and help me turn these floors at Lochlea. Like he was 60, so like he needed. I says it'll save you going to the gym and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. But so he picked him up. It was early in the morning, and we kind of went down and we turned this huge floor because we had kind of put too much barley down, just with us guessing what the weight of barley was. It was in the trailers, and we were about a couple of ton out. So we needed 12 ton. We had 14 ton in these trailers. So yeah, it was all kind of like that. So, but he had blisters all over his hands in the morning, and we went in and sat down for lunch, and he went, "Is that us finished?" I went, "No, we're doing it again in the afternoon, pal." So he was. To be fair to him, he just wrapped some plasters and kind of tape around his fingers, and away he went in the afternoon. So I gave him a good reward at the end of the day.
Well, he's an Elach after all, isn't he, John? So.
And then we used the grain dryer we used for drying the barley at harvest time. So our moisture meter doesn't go below 10%, so we're just guessing. So we ended up with something like 6.5% moisture and malt, and we got a good yield, but spirit quality was different. So I think it was Graham you were saying there.
Graham, it was Graham. It was asking.
Yeah, so the spirit quality was different. So yeah, it's one of those ones. It's kind of like what do you do? Like, do you go like, how do we do all of it, or do we just do a bit every year? Kind of like what Kilhoman do or Springbank, where they do like the local barley versions. So
Kilhoman started out with no floor malt and then a small, and then they've got a decent floor malt. They're still not doing all like Laphroaig and Bamore, I suppose. Not all their requirements. But it's going to be interesting. John, I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to the trailer edition coming out when it eventually comes out. Whisky and Wine Trails, Tom has bought us. It's so good to have you in, buddy. Thanks for bringing on great guests, he's saying, like John, and the depth of content that all of us enjoy. Tom, so nice to have you in, buddy, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thanks very much for your generous dram. And Daniel Williams has also brought us a dram from out in the Netherlands. He was wondering if malting was 100% effective, and if not, what percentage would be unmalted. I mean, there must be some grains that just don't, right?
Yeah, no, that's right. You just get you can measure that as well, and you will. So it'll be normally somewhere around kind of 4 to 5% just ungerminated grains at the end of the
so
cycle.
That's a wee bit like single pot still Irish. We just we've got unmalted barley as well in our mix too.
What you tend to do, though, like see in the floor maltings, what you'll tend to do, you'll over modify it, like the majority of it, so that when you crush up these unmodified ones, they extract the starches out of it. The over modified ones.
Okay.
We trick there, right?
It's interesting. It'd be amazing to put you rather just sitting here with me having a one-on-one. But you know there's been more or less 300 plus people and up towards 400 at some points tonight, John. Can you imagine being there and the amount of questions that they would have? But I've seen you do it in real life, and I know that you'll do it again in real life. Except the next time we see you doing it, you'll be talking about Lochlea on the mainland rather than Laphroaig on Islay. Danny Keenan is saying it's clear that John is just as passionate as ever and has a clear plan in place for the future of Lochlea. I look forward to seeing how the whisky develops over the years. Me too, Danny, and I think I'm more keen than ever, as I imagine that you would be. We can't go and visit Lochlea just now, much like you get to marinade in Laphroaig if you go and visit a distillery, or you get to understand it and learn a lot more. And until such a stage that we can go and visit Lochlea, we very much appreciate, John, that you're willing to step forward and help us connect and understand things a wee bit more, not just about the additions and what's available and what price it's at and how it's presented, but the reason that it exists and why it exists in the shape that it does. John, let's have a wee bit of fun before we let you get off to your bed tonight. We're going to close out tonight with a quiz, but tonight the quiz is very much a John Campbell quiz. If you don't manage a pass mark tonight, John, there will be pressure and a wee red face on you. If it's a John Campbell focused quiz, right? So the quiz at the end is always, there's banana skins and ass hattery involved, no doubt. But the pass mark is always 5 out of 10. You only need to get 50%. And it's always multiple choice. It's just here for good fun. And even the questions it's almost impossible to answer, hopefully there's a wee takeaway and something that everybody, at least if they don't learn something from it, it can prompt a wee bit of thought. Black Fen is saying this has been fascinating. John's been a great vPub guest. Thank you very much, Conrad. I hope you're doing well. Graham is saying, thanks, John. A great detailed answer on floor malting. Thanks, Graham. Thank you so much. And Ben Whisky with Molly saying, Fife Whisky Festival converted me to Lochlea. The future of Scottish whisky is in great hands with Lochlea, Lindores, Kingsbarns. Ben, I agree. I loved the Fife Whisky Festival. The only thing that was missing for me was you were in the early session and I was in the late session. We'll need to synchronise again next year. Jimmy Legg is saying, there's not even a sign outside the distillery. Actually, I've driven past and there is a sign, but it says no visitors or no visitor centre. Is that right? Or by appointment or something, right?
I think it's just...
I think there's a wee wooden sign just hanging there to the side.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right, and there's a big glass gable on the building there, but other than that, it just pretty much looked like it's just farmsteadings, right?
Yeah, no, it is. Yep, it really is.
If your target capacity for the year, just to get some idea of a scale, John, if you hit target, how many litres could you produce?
Probably around about, say, 185,000 litres.
I mean, when you talk about you're talking about your weekly production at Lochlea, Laphroaig would knock out in a morning, right?
Aye, no, yeah, aye, no, like what we do in a week, Laphroaig will do in 8 hours.
What you're doing a week, Laphroaig does in 8 hours. Yeah.
Yes.
So that just gives you some sense of scale. But I think that scale is enough, John. You're in how many markets are you in now, and where are you expanding to?
15 going to 20. So it's, where are we going this year? We are going Australia, New Zealand, are the extra markets this year, along with Sweden, Norway, and Finland, I think.
I'll ask for Jimmy
It'd
Leg.
be nice to get the Swedish market on because, like,
Yep.
but many's a good time in the Swedish market. So,
Yeah.
yeah, be nice.
Jimmy Leg is out in Nova Scotia. He's not in one of the most liberal when it comes to whiskey provinces in Canada. Are you in Canada yet?
Yeah, we're in 2 states. We're in Alberta and we are in Quebec.
Always Alberta first, right? It's easier to Alberta. Fantastic. So there you go. It is sticking. They are getting into more and more markets all the time, which is brilliant. Rob Smith is saying, really enjoying the vPub. Great info on malting from John. Nice to have you in, Rob. And Gerald Gascane. Sorry, Gerald. It's great to get the perspective and interaction from someone with John's experience, and lets us feel like so much more than just simple consumers. Cheers for lending us your time. Thanks for lending us yours as well, Gerald. Chris Pollock is saying, many thanks to John to show up in the vPub, and Ian Bruce is saying, there is a sign, but I just drove up, looked, and I was scared to take a photo in October. Jimmy Legacy, Canada is closer than Australia. That's true, but it's not about the distance, it's about the barriers that trade and the things put in place. Ben is saying, finishing up on a Laphroaig sherry cask. Good for you, Ben. I hope you enjoy it. Let's finish up, John, on getting a wee quiz at the end. Let's see how John does on the John Campbell special quiz at the end. Good luck, everybody. Same for you guys as well. Same as always is with the quiz at the end. Multiple choice. Good luck, everybody. You might think that I've gone a wee bit easy on you at the beginning, but it quite quickly becomes a wee bit tricky. I hope, unless you're John Campbell. Question 1. Which of these long-lost distilleries were set up in order to replicate Laphroaig's success and profile? Relax, people. Don't worry. Is it A? I'll let you pronounce that, John.
Ardennastil.
Ardennastil?
Yep.
Is A, Ardennastil, or B, Malt Mill, or C, Kildalton? I know what you're going to be thinking as you read it, but relax a wee bit. Lovely vPub, says Tom Elmer. Nice to have you in, Tom. Tom's up in Alaska. Brilliant to have you here, buddy. I've not forgotten about what we're going to do for your bookers and the Ben charity, John. It's underway. Ian Bruce is saying, can I throw in my whiskey collection to the Australia? That's right. It's absolutely true. So what are we saying here, John? I think Ardennastil was right next door to Laphroaig in order to mimic the style. It was also called Kildalton and Islay. So it's the same distillery. And Malt Mill was obviously inside Lagavulin purely to try and mimic Laphroaig. So the answer is every single one of those was set up to mimic Laphroaig's profile. Quite amazing when you think about it. I say every single one of those, it's only actually 2 distilleries there. Islay, Kildalton, and Ardennastil was all the same distillery. But a freebie for everybody to start the quiz. Everybody gets 1 out of 1 to start things off. Question 2. Laphroaig means what in Scots Gaelic? What does Laphroaig mean? You just bite your tongue here, John. I know it. Does it mean A, hollow by the broad bay, B, foot of the river, or C, safe shelter? Greg's Whiskey Guide is saying, oh, cool. He's relieved to get his 1 out of 1 to start with. Good for you, Greg, out in Paris. I hope you're doing well. Good to have you in. And Molasses Mike is saying, whoa, glad I picked up the right one. James Morgan is saying, whatever the market boys, no doubt. And Rob Smith is saying, I noticed that I do get 3 points. I noticed that. Do I get 3 points? Absolutely, buddy. It's the quiz at the end. You can take as many points as you like. Claim 3 for the first one. John, would you know that? Do you know what Càirdeas means in Gaelic? What does Laphroaig mean?
A hollow by the broad bay.
Absolutely. Foot of the river, I think, is Bunnahavin. Kind of close.
Oh,
and
yeah. I'm not thinking about that. Yep.
Safe shelter is, safe haven, actually, I think, is Lechic from Tobermory. So there we go. A, if you answered A, hollow by the broad bay. There you go, Laphroaig. Question 3. What does Tormore, Glenlivet, Cragganmore, and Tomintoul share? What do those 4 distilleries have in common? Wee banana skin icon here as well. A, ownership. B, their water source. C, gas supply pipe. Now, it is early on. We're only 3 questions in, so it should theoretically be a bit easier than it first seems. So just read the question. What does Tormore, Glenlivet, Cragganmore, and Tomintoul share? Do they share ownership, water source, or gas supply pipe? Do you know this, John? Just give me a nod or a shake your head.
I'm not 100% sure. I would go water source, I'm guessing.
Oh, you're going water source. See, I wondered if you might know this. This is a wee nugget that's been floating around for a long time for a vPub question. But it popped up again when I was researching Tormore, because you've done some time at Tormore.
Yeah, worked at Tormore, yep.
Yeah. When I was researching John, this popped up, and this came up as well. If you consider how close those 4 distilleries are, Tomintoul's obviously up the hill quite a bit. Cragganmore, Tormore, and Glenlivet are very close to each other. So they got together a few years back to share the same gas supply pipe.
Oh, no.
So there you go. Water sources are all completely different. And of course, Tormore is now Elixir, but was Pernod Ricard alongside Glenlivet. Whereas Cragganmore's Diageo, Tomintoul is, of course, Angus Dundee. So if you answered gas supply pipe, which seems a wee bit random, that was the one I was after. That's why the banana skin's in there. Sorry if I've caught any of you out early on. Question 4. According to the labels, which of these releases identify as a Speyside single malt? A, Glenfarclas 15-year-old. B, Longmorn 18-year-old. Or C, Macallan 12-year-old. Wee bit off-piste. This is John guessing here, or in the knowledge. This is not a John Campbell focused one, just mixing it up a wee bit. But according to their labels, which of these releases identify as a Speyside single malt? Glenfarclas 15, Longmorn 18, Macallan 12. Andrew Piers is asking if we can taste it in the whiskey. He's talking about the gas supply pipe. I hope not. Jimmy Legg is saying, boo, no one likes that answer, Aquaviti. There was a banana skin in there, Jimmy. And Jimmy Legg is saying, B, I have it right here in front. He's saying, B, I have A right here in front of me. Okay, so he's got the Glenfarclas. What would you say? What actually says Speyside single malt on the label, John? Would you be guessing here?
I was thinking Longmorn. You're
absolutely spot on. Glenfarclas and Macallan both state Highland. They are in the Speyside region, of course, but as is their they can choose to put Highland on the label if they like, and they do. So Highland is on the labels of Macallan and Glenfarclas. Longmorn, the 18-year-old specifically, does say Speyside single malt. Question 5 is always a picture question. Here, I'm going to look at John's face as I bring up this to see if he recognises that scene. That might help everybody out there. But we're looking at quite an interesting setup. There are 6 stills in the shot here, and a very light, airy still house, I have to say. A lot of glass around there. Don't know if that helps you. Are we looking at A, Ardmore in the Highlands? Are we looking at B, Laphroaig on Islay? Or C, are we looking at Tormore in Speyside? So we are looking at a busy still house, quite short, squat, fat stills, very steep descending line arms there as well. All plays into the flavour, no doubt. John, do you know what you're looking at there? Do you recognise the scene?
Yep, that's Ardmore. And big stills as well. Like
big fat stills of.
yeah.
Oops, I've said Tormore. Sorry, John. You. That's absolutely right. We are looking at Ardmore. I've made an error here, and I've left Tormore up. We are looking at Ardmore. And of course, the reason I've put that in there is, but John has done time also at Ardmore as well as Laphroaig and Tormore. So listen, you know the story. If I make a mistake on the vPub quiz at the end, you can all take a point. So if you got that one wrong, take it. Just take it as a freebie. I messed up, but we are looking at Ardmore here. John is absolutely right. Question 6. Which of the following accolades can John Campbell not lay claim to while at Laphroaig? Now, John might correct me on this one, but I decided to go with it anyway. I'm going to give you 3 accolades. John can claim 2 of these, but the one I'm looking for is the one that he cannot lay claim to. A, John is the longest serving distillery manager at Laphroaig. B, John is the oldest to inherit the role of Laphroaig distillery manager. Or C, John is the first Elach in 200 years to manage Laphroaig. Am I right that 2 out of 3 of those are correct, John, and 1 is just made up?
Yes.
Good. I'm relieved. I know I should have checked these with you beforehand, but that would only be half the fun, right? There are 8 stills at Ardmore. It says Whisky with Molly. I guess that 2 must have been out of shop, Ben. Interestingly, there are 7 stills at Laphroaig. I've always wanted to get to the bottom of how that works. How do you... I think it's 3 wash and 4 spirit at Laphroaig, John.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. No, they upgraded in the late 1960s and kind of basically changed the way it was made.
Does it make it quite complex then?
Like there's 2 different sizes of spirit still as well. So number 1 is double the size of numbers 2, 3, and 4, and it's run at a different pace, so it produces completely different whiskey.
Oh wow, that'd be an interesting release to compare.
Yeah, no,
that really would.
We were looking at doing that for a Càirdeas actually, but it's
a Càirdeas. Wow, that'd be fascinating. Are there 8 stills at Ardmore?
Yes, there are 8.
So only 6 in the shot there that I used.
No, it's a huge distillery that it'll do like 5-6 million litres of alcohol a year.
Thank goodness for it as well. It's brilliant stuff. It's not very well represented by Beam Suntory, but the Indies love it. We love it. It's fantastic spirit. It's fantastic. John, claim your 2 accolades. What are they?
I'll claim them. I am the longest serving distillery manager at Laphroaig, and I was the first Elach in 200 years to manage Laphroaig.
Absolutely terrific. And you were not the oldest. In fact, I believe you were in your early 30s when you became distillery manager, right?
True. Yep. At this point, I was the youngest distillery manager on Islay.
Is that right?
I wasn't when I left.
Well, I've met Jordan at Lagavulin, of course. He's not. Yeah. He's very, very young.
Barry's about the same age at Laphroaig.
Aye. When you started at Laphroaig,
he's 40, I think, Barry. So.
Oh, is he? He looks younger than
that.
But
I hope he's listening.
That's Jordan Paisley up at Lagavulin. Fantastic. He looked after us last year brilliantly well. Okay, John, I think you're doing quite well in this quiz.
Just one
Tom Elmer is saying I could have sworn there were 7 stills in that picture. maybe it's where you're drinking from or what you're drinking, Tom, but I think there were only 6 in that one. Question 6. Let's go back and have a look. Just make sure that Tom is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's absolutely right. It's me that said too much whiskey, Tom. I'm very glad I went back and checked because you'd have been spitting the teeth. Okay, question 7. The last of the Lochleas first crop series was the ploughing edition. The colour of its blue label was inspired by what? Now, John, this is according to your website. So if this is havers, if this is nonsense, I would blame the Lochleas website, okay? The last of the Lochleas first crop series, the ploughing edition, this nice kind of icy blue pale label, if you can see it. was inspired by what? They do put thought into these things, I guess. Was it A, the cold and frosty Ayrshire winters, B, the preferred colour of Rabbie Burns, or C, the cool seas which separate the mainland from Islay? Andrew Pearce is on 100% tonight. Stay steady, Andrew. You're nearly there. Jimmy Legg is saying there were 7 stills in that picture, Aquavite. See, I can't make mistakes easily. I don't get away with it. Tom has spotted it, and you're obviously better eyes and better at counting than I am. I think a lot of you are going to have to guess this one. A, the cold and frosty Ayrshire winters. B, the preferred colour of Rabbie Burns, or the cool seas which separate the mainland from Islay. The crowd, knowledgeable folk, but they all seem to be leaning towards, the majority seem to be leaning towards A. What is it, John?
Yeah, no, it's A.
The cold and frosty Ayrshire winters. That's legitimate then. That's just not marketing speak.
Nope.
Legitimate.
It's the same with harvest. That's the kind of the sunset in the summer, and the soil is very clay as well. So these kind of 2 things match for harvest as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So you do put thought into it. Good. Question 8. What was first released by Laphroaig in 2008? What was first? What did we first get our hands on in 2008? A, Laphroaig quarter cask, B, Càirdeas, or C, Select? What was first released in 2008, if you were paying attention earlier? Jimmy Legacy, and how cold does it get? I don't think it gets Canada cold, Jimmy. Typically, even where it's quite exposed out there on the west coast of Ayrshire, it'll regularly drop below freezing overnight, but it quite quickly pops above freezing in the daytime. Would that be right, John?
Yeah, no, that's true. And it's kind of funny, like Glasgow's in a valley, and Ayrshire, like that part of Lochleas in the kind of Ayrshire valley, and you basically go over the top into it every day, and it can be completely different weather in each of the valleys. It's really funny. Like today I left and it was kind of -3 in Glasgow, and you get to Ayrshire and it's like +1.
Yeah.
And you can leave and it's -3, and you get to Glasgow and it's +2. So it's funny weather. It's just different climates.
Especially when you drive over that Fenwick moor, right? It's just, that can be brutal. That's if the
it's
winds or the
raining
rain or the storms are going to come.
Yeah, no, I think it's raining in the Fenwick moor every single day.
Yeah, they take the rain for everyone. Okay, do you know this one, John? What was first released by Laphroaig in 2008?
Yep, it was Càirdeas.
It was quarter cask 2004, Select 2014. Yep. Càirdeas, as John mentioned earlier, it's been going for about 15 editions now. 2008 Càirdeas, he was part of that whole process, and it was named by his granny, which I just think is amazing. Question 9. Despite its lowland location, Lochlea is one of the most isolated malt distilleries. We're getting into asshat territory here now, John. As the crow flies, which distillery is it closest to? Okay, this is going to be difficult for a lot of folk. Probably not difficult for you, John. It's very isolated. It's not amongst other distilleries. So as the crow flies, which distillery is closest to Lochlea? Is it A, Lag on the Isle of Arran, B, Jackton in Eaglesham, or C, Ailsa Bay down in Girvan? Jimmy Legacy and I was hoping we wouldn't mention Select. John, I'm going to pause for a second here, because I have had good Select, and a lot of people tell me that I am a nut job and that all Select should be avoided. I don't think that's fair. You told me in Frankfurt what Select was, and I was gobsmacked, super interested. Tell me what Select is. What makes up Select?
Yeah, there's 5 different cask styles in Select. So that's kind of why it used to be called. We're going to call it Select Cask, but you couldn't call this. SWA didn't like that. We actually released some in Australia called Select Cask, and then we had to change the name to Select for the rest of the world. So, but yeah, no, it was there's PX sherry, Oloroso sherry. There is like first fill bourbons. There's quarter cask, and there's virgin American oak in select.
There was a suggestion in Frankfurt that you don't really focus too much on the proportions, and that select, it's almost like you embrace the variation, that it was okay for it to be slightly different and for it to be a slightly different cask makeup time after time, and that select was going to be one of these products that was going to be potentially slightly different over the years. Would that be right or wrong?
It can be. It was really what Select's purpose was to kind of bring people in, just an easier route into Laphroaig. So it was almost kind of like diet Laphroaig. So it would get
Diet
you in,
Laphroaig.
and then like it was just easier to get in. It was just a different whiskey. It was made for different things, so it'd be really good in cocktails, stuff like that. So it was just if you were already drinking Laphroaig, like Jimmy, don't go near it.
That's interesting. And interestingly, some of the markets that it was released in, John, when it first appeared, it was more expensive than the 10-year-old, which really confused people. But that can often be down to the supply chain, the distributor, and the retail rather than Laphroaig's plans.
It's the taxes, and there's a different alcohol strength as well. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go, Jimmy. I'm sorry to disappoint you by bringing up Select, but you brought it up first, my friend. Okay, what are we guessing here, John? What's closest as the crow flies? Lag, Jackton, or Ailsa Bay?
Oh, I'm really struggling with this one. I'm gonna since most of your answers have been B, I'm gonna go B again.
Oh, nice strategy, and it's done you proud this time. There's never a pattern to people try to read into this. Oh, they're all A's tonight, or they're all. There's never. My brain doesn't think in that way. Lag over on Arran is pretty close on a map as you look at it, but it's actually 52 kilometres as the crow flies. Ailsa Bay down in Girvan is quite a bit further south than Lochlea, 42 kilometres. But Jackton, which John kind of passes fairly close by every day in his commute, is only about 20 kilometres. It's the newest of those three by quite a way as well. So if you answered B, you're absolutely right. So let's see, before we go to the brutal asshat question at the end, let's see how the scores are doing. We've got Jimmy Legg on an 8 out of 9. Terrific, Jimmy. Well done. Daniel Williams, 7 out of 9. Andrew Pierce, 6. Tom Elmer, 8. Whisky with Molly, 8. Simon Oliver, good to see Simon on a 6. Jimmy Jazz on a 7. Andrew Butler, always scoring hard. He's on 9 out of 9. Andrew, you're in good shape alongside Sugar Kitty doing wells and Captain Bamis on a 7. Rob Smith on 7. Roosty on 7. John, how are you? You getting a score tonight?
I am 8 out of 9 so far.
8 out of 9. There you go.
The water supply one nailed me. The gas pipe.
Well, the gas pipe one, yeah, of course. And there's the one at the end, John, is the last question is always an asshat question, so it's almost guessing every week. Hell's Wood is complaining because she slipped up tonight. 8 out of 9 for Helen. Greg's Whiskey Guide on 7. Jerry Miller on 7, along with Chuck Malt, Minion, Fernando as well. Tom, Whiskey and Wine Trails, also 9 out of 9. So we've got 3 people, at least 3 people, looking for a 10 out of 10 tonight. Let's see if we can get them over the line with the asshat at the end. Both John's roles as distillery manager have been with L Distilleries. Today, how many Scotch malt L distilleries are there? That is Scotch malt distilleries that begin with the letter L. Is it about the same as A, the number of distilleries active on Islay, B, the number of distilleries owned currently by Beam Suntory, or C, is it the same as the amount of distilleries located in Dufftown and Speyside? So to answer an asshat, John, you've worked out that you need to know the answer to both things. How many L distilleries are there? We've talked about Lochlea and Laphroaig tonight. We've mentioned Lagavulin, but there are quite a few others out there. I'm asking you, how many L distilleries are there? The same as the amount of active distilleries on Islay, the same as the amount of distilleries owned by Beam Suntory, or the same as the amount of distilleries located in Dufftown? Can you manage a 9 out of 10, John? You're guessing, aren't you? All right. The only way to do the asshat is to guess and guess well.
I think so. It's definitely not C because you've had no C's tonight. So.
I love it. I love it. Could that be true? I've had no C's tonight. Just as interesting to see the way that you even think. Andrew Pierce is saying it always seems to be the same as Isla Distilleries, and Daniel Williams is saying, as in, how the hell am I supposed to know? Brilliant. So you're what are you going to go with, John?
Definitely A.
There are, I'll read them out to you. Lagavulin, Lag, Laphroaig, Lindors, Linkwood, Lochlea, Loch Lomond, Lochranza, and Longmorn. 9 distilleries, 9 distilleries beginning with L, and 9 active distilleries on Isla. John Campbell, you managed a breeze, a 9 out of 10 tonight with only the gas pipe tripping you up. Terrific stuff. Kyle Taylor is saying, Little Mill is closed, so it was active distilleries. Ladyburn also closed. So there you go. I read them out to you, Kyle, but good shooting there. You're you're brainstorming it and doing really well. And Captain Bamis is saying, my head hurts from this. That's the point of it, buddy. I hope you can still enjoy your head hurting. Most of the folk going with A and getting absolutely right. Dave Barnes is celebrating his first ever 10 out of 10. Superb, Dave. Congratulations to you. Andrew Butler is saying, hooray. 2 weeks in a row. Brilliant, Andrew. You've got to have quite a few 10 out of 10s under the hat now. Brilliant stuff. Well done. Looking to see if there are did any of the others sneak over? Listen, there's quite a few. Let's go with it counts as a 10 out of 10 tonight if you match John's 9 out of 10. I think that's reasonable, isn't it? Sugar Kitty also celebrating a 10 out of 10 as well. That's brilliant. There's nothing like it, John, than to round off a really nice vPub with some people celebrating full marks and a quiz at the end.
No, brilliant.
Can I say, John, I knew I was going to enjoy myself tonight, and I have. But I knew that because I really enjoyed, and I consider myself fortunate and lucky that I was sat next to you at the Ben dinner a few weeks ago. We only spoke to each other throughout the night and little fits and starts, but I enjoyed every time I spoke to you, and I got a warm feeling about you stepping forward to join us here. I'm very glad you did. I hope you're glad too, because I think the community has got a lot out of it as well. Of course, we want to learn about your history at Laphroaig. We want to ask lots and lots of questions, but we are hopefully super excited about what you're doing now. And it's just brilliant what you said tonight. And I've got another 20 years in me. I'm moving now. That, from the day that John Campbell raised his hand and said, I need to do more from a cast stenciler back in the 90s, shows that it's still the same attitude now. No time to rest when there's stuff to be done, right?
Yeah.
Love it, John. I hope you've enjoyed yourself tonight.
Yeah, no, it's been a blast. It's good fun. Thanks for everyone for the questions. Hopefully, it's brilliant. It's like, what better to spend an evening shooting the breeze, drinking a couple of whiskies, enjoying yourself.
Maybe one day soon we'll get a chance to do it in real life, John. That would be pretty cool as well. But in the meantime, we've managed to reach a lot of folk. And hopefully endear everything that you've achieved and everything that you will achieve as well. Jimmy Leggs bought us another wee dram to say, as I suspected, John and I know exactly the same amount about whiskey. 9 out of 10. Brilliant. And Danny Heavington has bought us a dram to say, great vPub tonight, Roy. John, was an absolute pleasure. Great time had. Thank you so much, Danny, and thank you to Jimmy for your drams. Hellswood has said, superb vPub and a fabulously open and honest guest. And John, wish him every success at Lochleas. Slancher. Thank you, Helen. Thank you so much. Rob is saying, great vPub. Come back, John. Come back soon, John. I agree, Rob. That would be amazing. Graham, we'll hold him accountable. Remember, in a few years down the line, we'll check his progress, see how he's doing. Graham Fraser saying, great vPub. Thanks to John and Roy. Thank you, Graham. Peter Lee saying, John has been a great information guest tonight. The cast strength by Lochlea is the one to look out for. Oh, aye. A wee bit of insider there. Willie Dollar is saying, John Campbell, a true gentleman. You too, Willie. Wonderful. I hope to see you soon, buddy. Andrew Butler is saying, it's been fantastic, and cheers to you both. Congratulations on the score, Andrew, and it's brilliant to have you. Tom Elmer is saying, thank you for another fun vPub. Thanks, John. John, if you want to hang about till the credits roll at the end, I'll gladly finish off this wee dram with you before you slink off to your bed. If you disappear, that's fine too. But I'd like to say thank you very much for having trust in us, and I hope that perhaps we can invite you back at some point in the future to see how things are progressing with John Campbell at Lochlea. Thank you, my friend. Slanchiva.
Aye. Cheers, Roy. Yep. All the best.
Thank you. Brilliant stuff. I've enjoyed that. I knew I would. I think you guys had an inkling that you would enjoy it as well. Keith McDonald saying, after this year's been a rock star distillery manager, it's great to know he's one in real life too. I think he's a humble gentleman as well. What a pleasure listening to John share his knowledge. Very kind. Excellent vPub. Fun and very instructive once again. Thanks, Roy, and all the folks. Cheers to all, says Fernando. Thank you, Fernando. Amazing, John. Thanks for joining us, says Ben Whisky with Molly. And Yuri is saying, thanks a lot, Roy and John. I'm glad that I had a chance to catch you live today. I'm glad that you had a chance to join us, Yuri. And Stefan Novak in Germany, my friend, thank you. Fantastic guest. Great vPub. Good night, all. Stefan, I'm so glad to have you in. Can't wait to hang out with you in Frankfurt a month from now. Limburg we're going to be at. Great stuff. I look forward to welcoming you all back next week. It's going to be a peat theme next week, a different take on our peat theme. Remember, we had Peat Fest 2022, and I'm just going to take that whole idea. We're just going to spend an evening in the vPub talking about peat. But there was an interesting conversation sparked up in Patreon recently, and it kind of feeds into the thing that I'm talking about next week, because there is more than one kind of peated whiskey, and that's what I'd like to focus on next week. I look forward to welcoming you all back again then, and until then, I'll raise this glass and say thank you for hanging out with me again on another vPub. You're all very dearly loved, and until next week, Slàinte mhath.